the feed for YouTube. Let me start with the video from Fox Business dealing with infrastructure and the Trump administration.
As now President Trump's energy secretary from his first term, former Texas Governor Rick Perry. Governor, great to see you. We're on the cusp of having the Energy Renaissance tag team of Doug Burgum at Interior and Chris Wright in the Energy Department. What's the first thing they do together, you say?
Well, they're going to follow the president's lead, and when it comes to opening up those offshore leases, which the Department of Interior has a substantial amount to do with, they're going to be out there doing away with the EV mandate. And I think as important as anything, the third and most important, in my opinion, that is getting rid of that LNG pause. Those three things will absolutely send a message, not just across the country that the jobs are back and American energy's back, but it'll send a message around the world to our allies that you can count on us, and that America's going to be doing everything that it can. These are two really, really capable individuals. I'm extremely excited to watch them as they go forward. I've known Doug for a long time as a governor. He's got that corporate CEO mentality, if you will. And Chris Wright, I think one of the most knowledgeable individuals in the energy sector to come along in a long time. So I think the president outdid himself.
So, Governor, Secretary, it's one thing to do the permitting and get the paperwork done and get rid of the regulatory state. But what do we need to do as a country to have the refining capacity to be able to take the product, get it in refined, and add to the market by ourselves without having to go somewhere else?
Yeah, good point, Jason. And I think you will see an infrastructure effort in this country like we've never seen before. When you don't overtax, you don't overregulate, and you don't overlitigate, then you free up these private sector folks. And I think you're going to see, particularly driven by the private sector, this isn't some big government thing that's going to come along. I think when you say to the private sector, listen, we need refineries, we need pipelines, we need small modular reactors, the private sector, they will get out there and lead the charge. So that's the message from President Trump is, listen, I get it. I'm a businessman. I'm not going to overtax you, overregulate you, overlitigate you. Go get it. And American businesses will do that. I have never been as excited as I am today to allow the American free enterprise system to go to work.
And that's, you're talking about technological innovations that will be unleashed. And you mentioned this, Governor Perry, where you have Chris Wright is an expert in horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. You know, this was championed by Harold Hamm. And this could not come at a more important time in terms of exporting natural gas overseas. Again, that empowers and enriches our allies. It makes them less dependent on Russia, but also our energy needs here in the United States and for AI, for artificial intelligence and electricity generation.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it, Dagan. When you think about this AI boom that's fixing to happen, the data centers that are going to be built all across this country, and it's going to require an extraordinary amount of energy. So we're all of the above. I mean, let's get out there and really focus on all of the above. But when you do that, I will suggest to you, you'll focus on the most dense energy sources that you have. Those are fossil fuels and nuclear energy. So again, I go back to these peaker plants that are going to be built, driven by LNG, liquefied natural gas, these small modular reactors that are now economically feasible, they're walk-away safe. You're going to see massive amounts of American infrastructure on the energy side being built. And I think we're going into one of the most glorious times in American history from the standpoint of developing infrastructure.
Well, Governor, Secretary, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. You did it as well as anybody. Glad you joined us. Thank you so much.
All right, I have the live stream going on Rumble, on YouTube. I'm going to be setting up X Spaces so you can do a call in. You can also watch the live stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's go to Bloomberg right now while I set up X Spaces.
102 parody at chat. Thank you, Audrey Child Friedman over in London for really writing it up for Bloomberg Currency. That's within the terminal BI currency Allaire. It's like go, but with Audrey you have to say Allaire because she's French and you know all that. Japan not playing much of a part here. Looney and Peso. Let's have Lisa do that. For the Interactive Broker Studios, our Bloomberg Business Flash, Al Mateo.
I love the word quiescent to the sort of thing, but it really describes it because traders kind of going back and forth about the economic implications of all this tariff talk. Speaking of which, now word that China regulators are looking at launching a formal probe into Intel. That's according to the Financial Times. Let's start with futures. So NASDAQ futures up about 0.1%, 26 points. S&P futures are a little changed, up about a point. Dow futures down 0.1%, down 77 points. So we get to the 2-year yield, 4.26%, up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 4.59%, up 3 basis points. Let's get to those currencies. So we have the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index down about 0.3%, Mexican peso down about 0.5%, Canadian dollar up 0.2% at 143.89 against the dollar. Then we go to the euro. That is little changed right now. I have to point out Bitcoin down about more than 2.5% at just above 99,000. To earnings, we'll start with Palantir because they're up 23%. It gave a forecast stronger than expected. It's pointing to its demand for its AI products. And you go to Pepsi, down 2% after sales missed estimates. Its volume sold in North America were down for brands like Frito-Lay, Quaker, and also some of its beverages. And to pharmaceuticals, Merck down 8%. It's halting those shipments for cancer-preventing Gardasil vaccine to China. And finally, Pfizer, revenue for the fourth quarter. Will it beat expectations? That was thanks to strong sales of the COVID vaccine and also the COVID pill. Its shares are up about 1%. That is Bloomberg Business Flash. All in time.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Greatly appreciate it. We don't do enough of this. It's like muni bonds. We just don't talk enough about our muni bonds. We're going to talk now about quiet money, college endowments, making a return, the huge pressures. I live in Lafayette College here, end of January, dorm infested with mice. It's Christian Romani's fault. He joins us as CIO at Lafayette College. Do you have a mouse fund at your endowment? Do you have something there like to take care of the mice?
Well, I didn't expect to start on that topic, but we're working on it.
I look at what Lafayette has done, and just tell us about the last 2-3 years. What's your return? How has your return been?
The return last year was 11 and change.
So above a lot of people.
Yes, we were in the top quartile as far as endowments are concerned.
Okay. I'll make it right to it. The major thing we study at Bloomberg is a focus on alternative investments. Are you heavy into an alternative formula, or is it more traditional asset classes?
Okay, so I think we are heavy into private equities. We have a substantial allocation into private equities. People call them alternatives, but that's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about private equity is basically it's a better equity. That's how we explain it. That is, you have a longer investment horizon and your returns are expected to be, or you expect the returns to be higher than the public equities by 300 basis points.
Let me ask a rude question, because Paul's too polite to ask it, which is, you make 11%, but are you saying, but we're going to get a pop from private equity because they weren't able to liquefy over the last 2, 3, 4 years? Do you look at private equity to pop that return?
So overall, from a long-term strategic allocation standpoint, we have a substantial allocation in private equities, expecting private equities over the long term, not 1 year, not 3 years, but long term, to outperform public equities by 300 basis points.
Is that not too rude, Paul?
That's awesome. I mean, is that kind of what I think folks refer to as the Yale model? It's not just the 60-40 equities, bonds, but also alternatives to kind of generate better returns?
So, the Yale model comes in multiple ways, and how people think about that, I think, is critically important. The way we think about it is our portfolio is roughly 70-30, 70% in equities and 30% in bonds. And for equities, we basically have 45% private public equities and 20% in private equities. Okay. Thinking that those private equities over the long term will outperform public equities. So better equities is how we think about it as opposed to alternatives.
So we've had just in the equity markets the past 2 years, very strong returns, north of 20% for the S&P 500. How do you think about 25, 26? I mean, what's your investment outlook here? Maybe given some of the political backdrop, the economic backdrop.
So that's a really good question. You know, as kind of perpetual investors, we don't make significant changes in terms of our allocation based on what our near-term outlook is. What we are looking to do is generate something north of 8.5%, as Tom was talking about before. And to do that, we have to have a substantial allocation in equities, because otherwise you can't generate those types of returns. The bond part is really more to keep yourself sane and make sure you know we don't have a significant issue and concern when equity markets get very volatile.
Krishna Malani with his folks of Lafayette College and of course Iconic and Invesco and others over the years. I want you to speak to people scared stiff now. Your hallmark is you have to participate. You got to be in the game to win. You're doing that in a college endowment now. How do people participate in this bifurcated, massively barbell market?
Well, so I think from a longer term perspective, having the decent allocation in equities is as important for us as it is for anybody else, because bonds, if you are taxable investors, generating after tax returns out of bonds has been very difficult and will likely remain very difficult. Again, equity.
For 2025, because of what Trump is doing, I would, and maybe even 2026, going heavy on equities is probably the best way to go. I don't know 100% of your portfolio, but like a 70-30 or an 80-20 or even a higher percentage in equities, heavy overweight equities, I think is the way to go. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great deodorants that have been developed. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've developed these great deodorants. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It's for males and females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. All right. Again, it's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural ingredients, very high quality. It's for males and females, and it's a dual purpose product. It allows you to use it as a deodorant every day, but it also will help to detoxify your body. And that's really important. It has no aluminum and no baking soda. So please go to my store, get these very high quality deodorants, either in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. It's for males and females, very high quality, dual purpose. You use it as a deodorant and to help to detoxify your body. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. Also on my store are very high quality soaps. You can get the structural nano silver soap in charcoal tea tree. Get a few bars for your household. They're very high quality. Something I use on a regular basis. It doesn't have any of the fancy chemicals that are in some of the other soaps. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the charcoal tea tree structural nano silver soap that I offer. Get a few bars for your household. Now, what I want to do is I want to play 2 videos. One's from CNN and one's from Fox News or Fox Business. Let's play the Fox Business one dealing with energy. Trump believes every American can use clean natural gas to heat. So let's see what they have to say here.
Hey. How do you find the answer in all this? You know, I think joining us today, however, our good friend, the new Interior Secretary, former North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Secretary Burgum, it's nice feel to it, nice ring to it, Secretary Burgum. I like that a lot. Well, congratulations, point number 1. Point number 2, what do you make of this Wall Street Journal headline? They're saying they're not going to, the oil companies are not going to produce more oil. They say the prices are high enough and there's not enough oil left, as I understood the article.
Well, Larry, I think this is just more people underestimating President Trump. I mean, you look at the wins that he's had in his first 2 weeks in office. You take a look at, Colombia folding, Mexico folding. This is a guy that wrote the Art of the Deal 30 plus years ago, and he's learned a lot in the last 30 years. You know him well. And certainly there's an opportunity here in the United States where we've got some of the highest regulatory costs. That's gone up under climate extremism under Biden. When we start tearing down those regulatory rules, the lack of, taking years of never getting drilling permits on public land. The Department of Interior itself controls 25% of the oil production in the country on public lands. And Joe Biden didn't issue any permits. He was the first president since Harry Truman that wasn't issuing permits. It's against the law what he was doing. So we can open up opportunities for lower cost production. We can cut it through cutting red tape. And then on the demand side, you see what's happening. Last week, Chevron makes a big announcement. This is a global multinational that says, hey, we're going to get into electric production with our natural gas. That's the first crossover where we've got an oil company saying we're going to produce electricity. They understand that we're short of electricity in this country. And as you know, you can't build a pipeline in this country under Joe Biden. And with the time of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we were offloading 400,000 barrels of dirty Russian heating oil into New England so people in New Hampshire and Maine could heat their homes with heating oil. Under President Trump, he believes that every American ought to be able to use clean natural gas to heat their homes. And when we get pipelines flowing in this country, we're going to see demand up. We're going to see production up in the U.S.
So, Chad, oil's about $70 today, as you well know. Brent's a little higher. West Texas about $70. A lot of people think you need to get oil down. I'm going to say, just call it $55. Could be 50, could be 60, I don't know. That would hurt Russia in the war against Ukraine. That would hurt Iran in all the Middle East terrorist wars, okay? Wouldn't help China much either, but just saying. Can oil companies make money? Can the frackers, can the independents, can the majors, could they make money at $50 a barrel? In your judgment, as former governor of North Dakota, you know a whole lot about this. You live with them up there, Harold Hamm and so forth. $50, can they make money? That would bring inflation down, interest rates way down. I think that's what Mr. Trump really wants. 50,
I would say about
60.
Can they make money there? $60 a barrel.
Well, nobody should underestimate the shale revolution and the entrepreneurs that drove that. Because during the last price war, the guys that are still alive and still running those businesses, they did figure out a way to increase their productivity per well. They did lower their break-even costs, become more profitable, but now we've got to help them. Joe Biden increased the break-even costs with all the regulations. And as you know, in commodities, there's the price of oil, but then there's the price of transportation. And we should be able to, we get pipelines built in this country. We consume more of that energy on site for electricity, turn electricity into data on site, manufacture intelligence, and then move that product around through a fiber optic cable. We've got an opportunity to do consumption near where we do production. That takes the transportation cost down to almost nothing. So all that's about the margin. It's not about the gross price. It's about the profitability on the bottom. And we can take costs out of transportation. We can take cost out of production because of the regulatory side. There's going to be a lot of profits to be made in this industry going forward.
So last one, Mr. Secretary. You can, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can drill and excavate for natural gas without going for oil. Natural gas, clean burning fuel. We have enough for the next 500 years or whatever, maybe longer. That would power the AI revolution. That would power the country. It's pretty inexpensive. The last time I looked, it was about $3 and gotten low as $2. It's clean burning and so forth and so on. And by the way, if we sell LNG to Europe, then they'll stop buying Russian natural gas and Russian oil, which would be another plus. Can you drill natural gas by itself and then sell it like all get out around the world, as well as employ it here at home? Last one.
Well, yes, we can, and we should never forget about Alaska. Alaska is just a massive resource of natural gas. We've got an opportunity with Japan, Philippines, South Korea, signing 20-year offtake agreements with some of those countries, displacing them buying oil from the Mideast. It's only 6 days ship from Alaska to Japan, most secure supply line they would have. But we have big opportunities for ourselves, both in Europe and in the Pacific. Bring peace abroad and bring prosperity at home. When we get done with this, Donald Trump's going to be winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
You got it. Yes, sir. All right, Secretary Doug Burgum. Terrific stuff, sir. Thanks very much.
All right, let's find the CNN video here.
For the most comfortable, luxurious, eco-friendly, and affordable. Handcrafted.
And breaking this morning, one trade war is on after the U.S. retreated from two others. The Wall Street Journal declared this morning Trump links on tariffs against Canada and Mexico after receiving concessions the countries had largely agreed to weeks or months ago. But China is a different story. A 10% tariff on Chinese imports went into effect at midnight. China retaliated immediately, a 15% tax on U.S. coal, 10% on U.S. crude oil, and large displacement cars and pickup trucks. Also, an investigation into Google for allegedly violating their anti-monopoly regulations. So this is the back and forth over just the last few hours. Let's get right to CNN's Elena Treen at the White House. Mark Stewart standing by in Beijing. Elena, first to you. This is a trade war, the one that Donald Trump has not backed off from.
That's exactly right. And as you mentioned, John, the president's widespread 10% tariffs on all of Chinese.
You know what's amazing? How CNN goes, the U.S. retreated, Trump backed off. What it was is there was an agreement between Canada and the United States and Mexico and the United States to strengthen the border. It wasn't a retreat or backed off. See, they always frame it where they want to demonize the Trump administration or make it seem as though the Trump administration is inept. Yet, what he's doing is actually genius.
Well, one this morning, we saw Beijing immediately retaliate with a barrage of their own measures. But look, this 10% figure is a far cry from the 60% figure we know that the president repeatedly talked about and threatened to levy on China throughout his time on the campaign trail. And it really signals that if the two countries cannot come to some sort of deal, we could see these tariffs increase even further. Now, we did hear the president kind of speak to this yesterday while in the Oval Office. Take a listen to how he put it.
We'll have some good meetings with China. We have meetings planned, and we'll see what happens. But that was just an opening salvo. If we can't make a deal with China, then the tariffs will be very, very substantial.
So you heard him, John, say that this is just an opening salvo. Now, look, we do know that the president is expected to speak directly with Chinese President Xi Jinping in the coming days. Unclear exactly when that will happen. But the key question, of course, is whether or not we could see some sort of swift deal come into place, just like we saw the president reach with both Canada and Mexico. Tariffs, of course, which were supposed to also go into effect at 12:01 today, but they were able to push that off for a month while the two sides continue to speak. Now, one thing as well that I know I'm picking up on in my conversations is how different Republicans could respond to a deal like that. We know many Republicans, particularly those on Capitol Hill, are a bit skeptical right now of whether the president is still just as hawkish on China as he has been in the past. It seems, if he is willing to make a deal with Xi Jinping, and maybe if these tariffs end up seeing an off-ramp like he had with the other countries, we could be hearing a lot of criticism from some of the hawks on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that will be one interesting dynamic to watch for sure. Elena, stand by. Let's go to Mark Stewart in Beijing. And Mark, Elena used the term opening salvo because that's what President Trump said. And I think we get the sense this morning that China could have done a lot more, but is keeping some of its powder dry.
China could have done a lot more. In fact, I was discussing with a colleague earlier today that one item that is not on this tariff list are soy products, which are very important to China because of the big pork industry here. If that were to be on the list, that could have a big impact. But we've been going through this list, and a lot of focus is on energy sources. No question, those are important, but if you look at the Chinese economy, China gets energy from so many other places beyond the United States, such as the Middle East, such as Russia. So in many regards,
China gets its oil, some of its oil, from Iran. So as the United States puts more pressure in the Middle East throughout 2025, and especially Iran, that's going to chokehold energy moving from Iran to China. And then they want to put tariffs on energy going into China, all right, because we're selling energy to China. Well, they're only hurting themselves. So this is what I mean. It's not just about the tariffs. There are a lot of different other variables that Trump can play around with, including war in the Middle East and sanctions with Iran. He's playing like 10 variables here.
This is a symbolic move. In fact, the list also includes American pickup trucks, which are not a very popular item among American consumers. Something that did catch our attention, though, is that China is targeting 2 U.S. companies on a corporate level, putting them on what's known as a list known as the Unreliable Entities List. 2 companies, including one, PVH, which has Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, 2 very well-known brands under its heading. China, in the most simple of terms, is saying that these companies are not following the rules, and that if China wants to, it can punish it and take action on its investments, its imports, its exports, its worker visas. That could be very detrimental. Still waiting to hear from these companies exactly if they have been notified and how that will play out. But this phone call that we've been talking about between these 2 leaders is going to be crucial because it will determine where this compass goes. And now that China has retaliated, will the White House throw back more tariffs back at China, or is the table going to be open for negotiation? When these 2 leaders last talked 2 weeks ago on a phone call, China talked about a fresh new start. We'll have to see if that language holds in this upcoming communication.
Yeah, we're going to see if China can get the same results that Canada and Mexico did from the United States, and likewise. All right, Mark Stewart in Beijing, our thanks to Elena Treen as well.
New this morning, should not be a big surprise. Stock futures dipping lower once again, this time after China hit back at the U.S. with retaliatory tariffs. Beijing doing this in response, of course, to President Trump's 10% tariff on Chinese imports. Thank goodness we've got CNN's Matt Egan here. Those numbers don't look so terrible. They certainly don't look like what we saw 24 hours ago when Mexico and Canada were in the line of fire. That has since subsided, but what is being targeted in China? And when you look at that, how might that affect not just the markets, but all of us?
Well, look, Sarah, China's hitting back. Not shocking, pretty predictable, actually. And yet this is going to raise some concerns about a broader U.S.-China trade war. So overnight, China laying out their retaliatory tariffs. They said that February 10th, they're going to impose a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas that's coming from the United States, 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and some vehicles. But that's not all. They're also going to impose new export controls on metals. They're adding 2 U.S. companies to a sanctions list, including the parent company of Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein, and they're launching this anti-monopoly Google investigation. So when you put it all together, this looks like a relatively measured response from China, right? They could have done more, and yet this does open the door to a potential tit-for-tat situation because the executive order that President Trump signed the other day includes specific language that said that if China hits back, then the president can up the tariffs as well. So this is heating up, U.S. and China, even as the North American trade tensions, thankfully, are cooling down, right? With hours to spare yesterday, Trump delayed for 1 month the tariffs on Canada, 25%, the tariffs on Mexico as well. He says he's satisfied with some of the commitments that Canada and Mexico have made, although there is some debate over how groundbreaking those commitments are. The Wall Street Journal put out an op-ed where they said that Trump blinked on the North American tariffs, and they said that none of this means the tariffs are some genius power play. They said that the tax, this 25% border tax, could return in a month if Mr. Trump is in the wrong mood, or if he doesn't like something.
No, because what it is it's buying time for the ones that are in automotive to be able to front load their stock so they don't have to shut down the plants. That's what's going on. Someone called Trump and said, you know, probably GM, Trump, give us another 30 days so we can, you know, stockpile some of our stock for the subsystems. Okay. CNN are idiots. They're complete idiots. All right. I have a live stream going on Rumble, live stream on YouTube. I also have the live stream on my website. On my website and on YouTube, you can see the dashboard of the market in real time. The market's going to be opening up in about 2 minutes. So we're going to see how the market opens. Equities in the futures market seem to be a little bit, under pressure here. The Japanese yen seems to be strengthening, and oil seems to be going down for WTI. All right, so we'll see what happens when the market opens. I also have a call-in, so please participate either in the chat or do the call-in through X Spaces. Ask questions. This is supposed to be interactive. I want your opinion about what's going on. So far I've gone over infrastructure, energy, and tariffs, and we'll continue. Any breaking news, we'll cover that too. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Good morning. Make sure you get your coffee if you're in the United States, because it's going to be a wild ride today.
Done. So look at it clearly. Tariff man is back, right? The tariffs are dialed up, they're dialed down, they're paused, they're ramped up. So much chaos and confusion for consumers, for investors, CEOs. Oh, the market hates that. Yeah, completely.
So when it comes to consumers and American consumers in particular, and when you see things like oil and coal, I mean, we're talking about energy prices potentially. What could they experience with this?
Yeah, look, even the president has acknowledged that there could be some pain from this trade battle. We've heard that from economists and trade experts again and again. Now, to put a finer point on it, the Peterson Institute put out some new research where they said that the typical family is going to get hit by $1,200 per year. This is from the tariffs that were just imposed on China and the ones that could come in a month on Canada and on Mexico. And look, the less money you make, the more you're going to feel this. This research finds that if you are in the bottom 20% of earners, this is going to eat up about 3% of your paycheck. You're living paycheck to paycheck. That is something you're going to notice, much less, just barely 1% of the top 20% of earners. And if you're in the top 1%, you're not even going to notice this at all. So just another reminder here, right? I mean, people are still hurting from high prices at the grocery store, rent, insurance. This could add insult to injury.
It is going to get rough if it doesn't get sorted out, Egan. I think the other countries like China and Mexico, especially Mexico and Canada, thinking with friends like this who.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Improving your gut biome is really important. I have a powdered probiotic or a veggie cap version probiotic. I usually take the powder one during my lunch. There's a little scooper. You just mix it with filtered water, soft foods, or a smoothie. However you want to mix it. It's up to you. But taking a good probiotic every day is really important. Why? It brings down inflammation in your gut, helps with metabolism, improves your immune system, improves the health of your liver, and improves the communication between your gut and your brain. With a good gut biome, you're going to sleep better, you're going to have better mental acuity, and you're going to reduce issues like depression. All right? There is an association between depression. It's not the only association, but poor gut health could cause certain issues with depression. All right? In addition, a good gut biome and good gut health will improve skin, hair, and nails. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. And get the powdered probiotic or the veggie cap version. Both are very high quality. You should be taking this every day. All right, let's drop into Bloomberg here and see what they have to say.
Yeah, and you guys have to go, maybe not. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, as I've written, I do prefer to buy cyclicals at better prices. We're buyers on the dips and these pullbacks into the uncertainty. And the flip side of that statement is I think it's still probably not the perfect time for defensives like healthcare.
Merck 16 is the PE. The forward PE is under 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Merck.
Exactly. So, Tally, how do you deal, or how do you talk to your clients about dealing with a world in which tariff discussions and other types of economic policy?
Okay, the market is open in New York, so the S&P 500 is trading at 5,998. VIX is at 17.91. The Euro USD is trading at 1.03. Oil is trading at 70.99. Bitcoin ETF long, BITO, is trading at 23.35. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 155.10.
To economic and earnings growth. But let's not get carried away. Changes in the dollar and changes in earnings, the sign is negative, but it's not super strong. It's minus 0.4, which is not much to write home about when it comes to macro.
Quickly, what are you doing with cash?
We love cash. There's a mountain of it on the sidelines, and that's the stuff that we are ready to deploy, and we are shopping the sales time.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. This morning, Lisa Fred is hanging on every word you say in North Carolina. He's got eggs at $4 a dozen, but he does say the price has gone up 32% from 25 cents per egg
Well, he's
up
lucky.
to 33 cents per egg.
He's lucky he can get them. That's the whole thing. Like a lot of stores. Well, I went a few weeks back and there was nothing on the store shelves. So.
Fred's not in the store.
So eggs. I'm not having, a little bit of a reduction in being able to find some eggs in New York, at least where I buy them. The problem is milk. Milk seems to be an issue.
Nothing.
My sister-in-law has them. She has chickens, yes, on her farm. She does. But it's a lot of
What I
work.
know is we refrigerate them, and a lot of other societies don't. And they're like different eggs. They have a coating thing or something.
Oh, it's very confusing.
It's very, yes.
Pasteurized, not pasteurized, cage-free, what's not cage-free. I don't even know.
Fred, thank you so much for that. I'm running green on the screen. NASDAQ up fractionally is here in the VIX. Giving you some love from 21 yesterday to 17.
All right, we're going to go to this news that came out yesterday about the sovereign wealth fund that's going to be created through the Treasury Department. My gut feeling with the sovereign wealth fund executive order that Trump signed, I believe it was yesterday, maybe he's signing it today. I'm not so sure that's a good idea. I don't like the idea of the Treasury Department buying into companies. That seems kind of state control. So, but I could be wrong on the way that the sovereign wealth fund is going to be run, but it seems like it's too close to state control ownership. I'm against it. I don't understand why he wants to do it. Why in a open market do you need a sovereign wealth fund that's run by the Treasury Department? So let's go to Fox Business to get a little bit more clarity on this.
No harmful pesticides, high quality ingredients, Stonyfield organic, good on purpose.
I want it out.
Every reason is the right fuel and liquefied natural gas. 10% on crude oil, agricultural machinery and large vehicles, and export controls on key.
Let me start from the beginning.
Trump prepares to talk with Xi Jinping potentially as soon as today. Beijing announces retaliatory tariffs on the United States beginning February 10th after President Trump's 10% import tariff on China went into effect at midnight last night. China's plan includes a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas, 10% on crude oil, agricultural machinery and large vehicles, and export controls on key rare minerals. It will also open an antitrust probe into Google, months after doing the same to NVIDIA. Meanwhile, Trump striking deals with both Canada and Mexico to pause his 25% tariffs for 30 days. Prime Minister Trudeau agreeing to put Canada's $1.3 billion border plan into effect, sending upwards of 10,000 troops to the northern border. It will also create a fentanyl czar position. He'll list cartels as terrorists and launch a joint strike force combat organized crime. Mexico's President Sheinbaum also vowing 10,000 troops to the border with promised cooperation with key American cabinet positions. Trump also hinted yesterday that the European Union could face tariffs next. Watch.
We have massive deficits with the European Union, massive, like $350 billion, if you can believe it. They don't take our farm product. They don't take our cars. They don't take almost anything, but we take their cars. We have millions of cars coming in. We don't charge them tariffs. They make it impossible to sell cars in the European Union. They make it very difficult, agricultural product. They actually don't take it, and they have a lot of excuses.
So it looks like the expectation is for the tariffs on Europe to start mid-February. Samantha, your reaction?
Well, what we're seeing right now is really the art of the deal in real time. President Trump has made it clear these aren't tariffs just for the sake of tariffs. There's a broader strategy at play here, and it has to do first and foremost with resetting the table with regard to how America is treated and fairness. So whether you're a friend, ally, neighbor, or adversary, America is going to demand to be treated fairly. We've seen just within 24 hours, President Trump was able to get done more than has been done in the last 4 years. He's also made it clear this is not just a trade war, it's a drug and crime war. And so with respect to Canada and Mexico in particular, they've got a very troubling relationship with the cartels, and they need to do more to secure their side of the border with respect to this drug and crime war.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said first thing out of the gate yesterday. This is a drug war, not a trade war, because I know President Trump doesn't want to start a trade war, but he does want reciprocity, and he wants the U.S. to be treated fairly. He also signed an executive order yesterday to create the first ever U.S. sovereign wealth fund with a suggestion on what could be the first purchase. Watch this.
We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth. As an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it, otherwise we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund.
Well, they've got a lot of issues with China. This conversation with Xi Jinping will be important, Cheryl, and I don't know that China is going to want to go all in on, taking Trump to task, because that economy is weaker than anybody understands, and Xi Jinping is weaker than people know. So we'll see how much Xi Jinping wants to take this to the mat.
Well, the sovereign wealth fund idea, I think, is very interesting and intriguing.
Fox Business is right about this, that CNN didn't focus on when they were talking about the tariff issue. China economically is weak. President Xi is also weak. So putting pressure on China may actually topple Xi or really question his authority within the CCP. And that's another genius move with him. While CNN's only focused on, at your table, it's going to, increase by $1,200. If all these tariffs get implemented. Most likely all the tariffs won't get implemented. But what happens if it does push for, perhaps it cracks the stability, perhaps it pushes President Xi over the edge, and the CCP starts to move in and tries to topple him. It's very possible. The economy in China is very unstable, very unstable. Now, the sovereign wealth fund, I'm concerned about, because I don't like the idea of the Treasury Department owning stocks. Why should the government own have a position in companies. Now, I do know that, you know, the government does put a position in certain companies, especially in its early phases. And part of that is through DARPA. But I have mixed thoughts about this whole sovereign wealth fund, unless I see something else that he's doing that may be beneficial. But I have reservations on the sovereign wealth fund idea.
But on the China front of this, absolutely, Maria, you mentioned that yesterday, you're spot on, that their economy is weakened, Xi Jinping is weakened. But on the heels of that, what the Commerce Ministry did overnight, I mean, you mentioned, you know, the broad tariffs on LNG and oil, et cetera. But what I thought was interesting is the Commerce Ministry added several metals and metal-based products to a list of export control actions.
Something that popped in my mind that I should bring it up. When markets have volatility and they're starting to sell off and there's not liquidity, banks start worrying, right? So the Federal Reserve comes in and buys some of the assets from the bank and then deposits liquidity, deposits cash into their account, and the banks can survive for another day, right? So the lender of last resort, what's the term? That's the economic term. So the Federal Reserve is acting as lender of last resort and buying some assets, usually bonds. During the crisis of Lehman, they even went to, you know, lower quality assets to purchase. If there is a war or a trade war or some sort of perturbation in the market, the Federal Reserve comes in and backstops the banks, right? They help the banks to being lender of last resort. And the Treasury could come in and actually purchase assets that are vital for a war effort, all right? So the sovereign wealth fund being managed by the Treasury Department, let's just assume that there's a war and there's a gigantic market sell-off and there's the liquidity dries up. And as you try to sell your stocks, it just keeps on falling. This is exactly what happened during Lehman. And so the banks have positions, and then their balance sheet, because it's mark to market, it starts to plummet. And so the Federal Reserve comes in, backstops the banks, and the sovereign wealth fund backstops some of the critical companies. And the sovereign wealth fund ends up being lender of last resort. They become the buyer of these falling assets in the market. That might be the reason why he's doing this. Now, if that's the case, then it might be a good idea to save these companies from the shorts, the ones that are shorting the market and the lack of liquidity. The problem comes in is that this seems to be opening up government ownership, corruption, insider information, because the Treasury Department will know what they're going to be buying. If you know beforehand what they're going to be buying, you could put your position in and make a lot of money. So this intervention of the market by the government is not what capitalism is about. We don't believe in state ownership. That's not part of our political makeup, our political construct. So I'm concerned about the sovereign wealth fund, but I can see how the sovereign wealth fund could be the mechanism for the Treasury Department to prevent assets from depreciating if a war does take place.
And this is things that are used in industrial machinery, aerospace, and military applications. And you know, we know they give us they give Mexico the chemicals for fentanyl, but they could also hurt us in this way. So I think that there's going to be a very nuanced, very deep conversation between President Trump and Xi Jinping. There has to be.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick are leading that project of a sovereign wealth fund. It's unclear how the fund will be capitalized, but Trump has previously pitched using tariff money. The largest sovereign wealth funds in the world are owned by Norway, China, Hong Kong, and the Emirates. And the view this morning from TD Cowen is the following. We do not see how Treasury can fund a sovereign wealth fund while Treasury is using extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on the debt. So you've got that, of course, playing out. Treasury is tapping all available pools of cash to ensure the United States can pay its bill. Diverting funds from this to a sovereign wealth fund could bring forward the so-called X date when the U.S. technically.
You know, what a sovereign wealth fund could do is that you invest in the market. Now, again, the whole principle is that by printing money, it creates inflation, and inflation later literally increases asset prices and prices for just everyday living. But inflation does increase stocks. All right, but the true return is the return on that stock minus the inflation. So you have to adjust it to know what your true profit is. But the point I'm making is that inflation brings up stocks. So if the sovereign wealth fund puts money into the stock market, right, and they're printing money, the sovereign wealth fund gains, right? It appreciates, it has a high rate of return. And then what happens is that the Treasury Department can get out of their position, have that money, and then use that to fund the government. But literally the government the government is the catalyst, is the genesis of the reason why the sovereign wealth fund actually increased, because they printed more money. It's almost like a positive feedback loop.
On its debt. So that's also something to think about, Scotty Martin.
Yeah, are we waiting for this default on the debt for, I don't know, every year, every month? I mean, like, when is this going to stop? How do you want the Treasury to pay for this? We're the wealthiest country in the world. We have the money to do. Oh, by the way, we have the world's reserve currency. So what if
we're not the wealthiest country in the world? We're the most indebted. Well, maybe not most indebted. It depends on how you want to view indebtedness relative to GDP. No, we're not. We're not the most indebted. Japan might be the most indebted. Are we the wealthiest in terms of what? The highest GDP, the biggest economy? Okay, but we have a lot of debt. So I wouldn't say that we're the wealthiest. I mean, it depends on what metric you're using. We have a lot of dumb people coming out of primary school. That doesn't seem, there's different elements of wealth and prosperity. Is it just financial? What about our intellectual capital? That's a form of wealth. Our intellectual capital seems to be plummeting. Our primary schools suck.
To pay for it or to fill up that wealth fund, because guess what? We can put money into companies or projects that the government wants to do, and that can grow the fund itself once that gets going.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of a sovereign wealth fund. I certainly do.
I'll put the first dollar in. How about that? Maybe that'll get the naysayers.
I'm not sure that it's a great idea. I don't like the idea of the government owning stocks. We should not. That's CCP shit. That's communism. That's not a free market cap. That's not a free market. That's not capitalism. It's amazing how Fox Business tiptoed right into state ownership.
Where's the dedicated funding coming from? The analyst at TV writes, a true sovereign wealth fund would likely need a dedicated funding source, like fees paid to the government for oil and gas leases. Maybe that's where Trump is going with this. Treasury might also find a way to use the proceeds from selling stakes in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as a way to generate funding. We see funding as the most stable if Congress authorizes it. Otherwise, there could be a legal action to block the investments. So lots of questions about how this will work.
How are you backing up your business critical Microsoft?
Alrighty. Let's There's breaking news here. There was 5 people shot in an adult education center in Sweden. Let's go to live now.
Another government official addressing the violence of this area. They say the population of this area is around 155,000 people. So we continue to follow this in real time. Just tragic news to share with you on this Tuesday morning. The Associated Press reporting 5 people shot at this adult education center in Sweden. They say among the 5 people dead is the perpetrator who died by suicide. Here at 9:52 on the East Coast, we're going to take our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour. We'll be right back.
All right. So while Live Now is on commercial, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. And a supplement that I take every day is the Max 35. I take a teaspoon of this a day. I swish it in my mouth. I gargle about 30 seconds, 20, 30 seconds, and then swallow. It will maintain a good barrier for your mucosal lining and your epithelial tissue, especially in your oral pharynx. That basically means that you're improving your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Max 35 or the Max 14. Take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. If you're not feeling so hot because of the cold season, guess what? Take a tablespoon or 2 a day. Do the same thing, swish it in your mouth, gargle 30 seconds or so, and then swallow. You're neutralizing and you're improving that barrier and improving your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Something else that's really important to take to improve your health is to maintain and build muscle. That's really important. If you're an athlete, you need to strengthen up your body for your particular sport. Or if you're older, you need to do resistance training to maintain and build muscle. A lot of people don't realize that when you get into your geriatric years, your energy levels start to go down, you've lost a lot of muscle, and that muscle that you lost starts to change your bone structure and your skeletal system. And so what happens is that you lose back muscles, you lose bone density, and all of a sudden, you know, your body, because of lack of energy, you start having walking problems, maybe hip issues, and lots of other things, right? So it starts with increasing your energy and maintaining muscle. That's really important. And by maintaining muscle, you're improving your bone structure, and you're maintaining you're maintaining and helping your musculature. Taking Myotrol every day is very important, especially if you're 40 plus years old. Do some resistance training and you'll gain muscle and maintain muscle mass. It'll improve your mitochondrial health, so you'll have more ATP. In addition, if you're an athlete, take Myotrol and you will gain more strength. Stack this, if you're an athlete, stack this with Gladiator Barley from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you will get huge gains because the Gladiator Barley is protein. The Myotrol is going to help you build the strength. Also, the Gladiator Barley, the way it's formulated, will add strength and energy to your routine. You're going to recover faster, and you're going to be building muscle. Now, the ones that are 40 plus years old, do resistance training, take the Myotrol, and if you want to, get much more fit, then also take the Gladiator Barley with the Myotrol, and you're going to get huge gains. It's really important. A lot of people don't realize when they go work out with weights, they're focused on the front part of their core, but not their back. And so what happens is that over time, your back muscles start to atrophy, or you're asymmetric in your proportions. So what happens over time, your spine starts to shrink. There's a compression that takes place, and then you start to lean over. And this is exactly what's happening with many people that are in their geriatric years. They're not weightlifting. They're not taking supplementation to build up muscle and increase their energy levels. And so what happens is they slowly start losing bone density and they're slowly starting to lose muscle mass and they're starting to lean over, and then their bone density gets to the point where if they fall, they break their hip and they, you know, they might die in 3 days, 3 or 3 weeks later. It's a big problem. It's a big problem, but it's 100% preventable. And what you need to do to prevent it is weight lift. If you weight lift, you're going to be building up better density, bone density. You're going to have better blood flow. And not only that, you're going to increase your musculature, but you have to balance it. You know, that means that you have to work out all the muscles, all the muscle groups, not just a few. Especially your back muscles are really important. You look at if you look at an astronaut, especially during the Apollo missions, they were very fit, and a lot of them are in their 80s. So, you know, and you look at the way the health that they were in their 70s and 80s, they have this better musculature. All right. Now, again, you know, they were in the military and they worked out and, you know, and they went through very intense physical strain to be an astronaut. So that may be part of it. But the point that I'm making is that you can take a lesson from that and apply it to how do you prevent atrophy in your geriatric years? And that's exactly what you need to do. You have to take the right supplementation. You have to work out. Cottrell and Gladiator Barley is going to do that for you. But you got to do the resistance training. So if you want to prevent the curvature of your spine, you want to prevent the compression of your spine, start working on your back muscles. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I give you detailed information on how to use these supplements, how to stack them, how to look at it a holistic approach. Better, much better than anything that Alex Jones does. You know why? Because I actually know about the human body. Alex Jones doesn't. All right. Let's go to General Keane on Fox News talking about this was 37 minutes ago through the publication through Fox Business, dealing with Israel and Hamas's ceasefire deal.
Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington today for a meeting with President Trump at the White House. Both leaders expected to discuss Israel's ceasefire with Hamas and Hezbollah and the overall tensions in the Middle East. Netanyahu also met with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz and Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff yesterday. The Trump administration reportedly asking congressional leadership to approve a new $1 billion arms sale to Israel, which will include thousands of bombs, armored bulldozers, and other weapons. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, delighted to be here, Maria.
What are you expecting out of the Netanyahu meeting?
Well, I think there's a number of things on the agenda, but certainly let's give significance to the fact that this is the first international leader that President Trump is meeting with in person. And it has to do with the significance of obviously what has taken place in the Middle East and where is this ceasefire and hostage release prisoner exchange going, and also a termination to the war. Literally what's on the table is we've seen the initial stages of hostage and prisoner exchange take place in the first couple of weeks of the 42-day ceasefire. Scores of hostages still remain. And today is supposed to be the beginning of the second phase of the operation in terms of negotiations. It looks like Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to send his team to Doha at the end of the week after having having discussions with President Trump to begin those negotiations. And what's critical about those certainly are how far apart Hamas and Prime Minister Netanyahu truly are. What the end state of those negotiations is supposed to be, Hamas is supposed to give up governance, which is unlikely given what we've already seen in the video exchanges of of the hostages. And Israel is supposed to leave Gaza and end the war permanently. Both of those are clearly at odds. And so that's going to be on the table for discussion. Normalization of relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel is the second thing on the discussion. Much more pressure on Saudi Arabia now, Maria, as a result of the war, in terms of what is the final solution for the Palestinians? Is there a pathway to an end state? Certainly, one of the reasons for Hamas beginning this war was to stop that normalization that was taking place, and they certainly have achieved it. And then the third thing, Maria, is what are they going to do about Iran? Iran is back on their heels, and it's a huge strategic opportunity to end their influence in the Middle East, something we have not been able to do for 44 years.
And of course, the Qataris are in the middle of this, right? What do you want to ask the Qataris or the Prime Minister of Qatar about all of this? Because they're right there in the negotiating role of dealing with Hamas, Hezbollah on one side and the Israelis on the other.
Yeah, well, they're arbitrating, obviously, the negotiations that are going to take place in Qatar, now likely to begin at the end of the week. And those are tough issues. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu, really where he is, he still does not want Hamas to stay in control of Gaza, which means that...
Breaking news, Panama said to mull canceling port deal with Hong Kong. Hong Kong firm. Looks like Trump's winning again.
After the hostage prisoner exchange release, or where likely most of them are released, he would like to go in there and end this. And I'm sure he's going to have that discussion with President Trump today. And the Qataris are certainly trying to negotiate a final settlement here. But as I've indicated, these two issues are really at odds with each other. And this has always been well known that the phase two is the hardest part of this deal, because Hamas does not want to give up control and Israel does not want them to stay in control. It's that simple.
Yeah. So, I mean, if this is so hard, Hamas doesn't want to give up control, Israel does not want them to stay in that region. I mean, how does this get resolved?
Well, in Prime Minister Netanyahu's mind, the only way to resolve it is to go back in and continue the war, continue the destruction of it. That's not the view of others participating in the talk, certainly. But I think this is a tough issue, and I think President Trump and his team will be able to sprinkle a little wisdom on some of this as well. And it remains to be seen. What Prime Minister Netanyahu wants is support from the administration, certainly. He wants to end the war. There's no doubt about that. But Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to end it on terms, remember, from the outset, destroy Hamas, take away their governance role, and deny them the opportunity to reattack again. He knows if he leaves thousands of fighters inside of Gaza, Maria, they will rearm, they will reattack at some point. And that is something that has been his clear objective from the beginning not to have happen. He believes, rightfully so, I think, that this is an existential threat to the very survival of Israel. And he's determined to achieve that end. He's got a very good ally and a supporter in President Trump. And obviously these discussions that are going to take place this afternoon are critical.
Yeah, really critical. Such great analysis. Thank you for that, sir. President Trump also expressing interest yesterday in a deal with Ukraine, tying the aid being sent to Ukraine to guaranteed access to its rare earth minerals, General. Ukrainian President Zelensky.
I just want to interrupt here. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,019, and the VIX is starting to drop. It's at 17.42.
Warned over the weekend that any peace talks without involving Ukraine are dangerous. President Trump suggested his administration is already speaking with Moscow, saying talks are going well there. So, General, I mean, should Zelensky have a seat at the table here in terms of Trump talking with Russia about this war? And what about this idea that if the U.S. continues sending money, then they should actually be sending us those minerals?
Well, a couple of things here on the rare earth minerals. Certainly, this was a geological survey done by a very reputable Canadian company, which has identified these minerals to the tune of $26 trillion are there. And myself and Mark Thiessen wrote an article in the Washington Post about how we can take American taxpayers' dollars off the table here by one, using Russian frozen assets, and two, using these rare earth minerals as collateral for loans that clearly the Ukrainians will be able to pay back. And certainly what President Trump wants is the ability to invest in these minerals as well. All of that is certainly possible going forward, and it begins to change the
Interesting how he said he wants to invest in these minerals. Maybe the sovereign wealth fund's tied to this. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows?
Dynamics in our country in terms of continuing to provide assistance to Ukraine financially. Secondly, it's unlikely we're going to make any real progress in negotiations until Russia and Ukraine sit down and talk to each other. Certainly, General Kellogg is talking to each and setting the conditions for those negotiations. But once those negotiations start, hopefully we'll be able to make some real progress. Putin has yet to make up his mind that he's going to come to the negotiating table, and likely President Trump's going to have to put some pressure on him.
Really interesting. And meanwhile, then there's Iran reportedly developing nuclear missiles based on North Korean designs that can reach Europe, General. The National Council of Resistance of Iran is accusing Tehran of expediting these nuclear weapons programs, with 2 facilities rushing to complete a warhead capable of traveling more than 1,800 miles in a hurry. Your reaction?
Yeah, what makes Iran very dangerous, certainly, is the fact that they have ballistic missiles that can reach Europe and deliver a nuclear weapon once they're able to weaponize those missiles. That's the path that they're on. The issue we have now is we can take them off that path. Two ways. What Israel would like to do is kinetically take down their nuclear enterprise, their 12 or so sites that they have with the assistance of the United States, or voluntarily get Iran to dismantle the program, verification, a date certain, inspectors doing it, etc. There's a couple of pathways here and a couple of options. Those will be discussed this afternoon. And certainly there is a huge opportunity here for Iran never to continue to be the malign and adverse menace they've been for 44 years. They are literally back on their heels now.
I mean, do the Qataris want that? Is this something that everyone wants, or are half of the people here talking about it complicit and they actually want Iran to get stronger?
Most of the region wants Iran to stop the malign and aggressive activity they've had for all of these years, 44 years of it. They have destabilized the Middle East. And now they're militarily defenseless. They've lost two of their most important proxies have been decimated. They've lost their strategic platform in Syria. We have never seen them as weak as this since their existence, and we have to take advantage of it.
Wow, great point. General, it's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lozenges that I have. I have it in 2 varieties. Elderberry zinc in a 21 count, and also Manuka honey in a 21 count. Very high quality lozenges. Right when you have that irritation, either during the cold season or during the allergy season, take it right away, mitigate the irritant, and boost up your immune system by creating that barrier with that mucosal lining, and keep the epithelial tissue healthy, so you're mitigating problems, right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 for any order, and get a couple bags for your household, all right, or for work. Because guess what? A lot of people at your work, come, in and they spread stuff, all right, and you want to mitigate that. So please go to my store, get the Manuka honey or the elderberry zinc lozenges, get a few bags for your household, be prepared. All right, let's go to Bloomberg.
Given that the tariffs look like they've been pushed back for at least a month, and obviously traders hoping for more than that, we don't see the flight to safety with the U.S. dollar at the moment, so things are trading a bit normally. But I totally
Well, traders want volatility. Traders want no resolution going back and forth because that increases volatility. Investors want stability. So he was a little wrong on his phraseology.
It changes very, very quickly around here.
That's right. It's like trading versus investing. It like feels very, very different. I should point out the Kirkuk fields are in Iraq, but so then that makes a difference when it comes to BP being able to develop there. But to your point, they are developing more oil, maybe in the Middle East. They're pausing some renewable fuels projects in Australia. So just just putting that out there for the universe.
I told you it was a year.
It is. I know. I'm sorry. I'll explain to you. My bad. Ben Signorello, Bloomberg macro strategist, joining us there. Let's get back to the tariff conversation. And Curran is Bloomberg Global Economy reporter. China hitting back against Trump's tariffs, but many are saying, Enda, that it's like measured, that they could have been a lot worse. It was still friendly the way they put it out. Having covered Asia and lived in Asia for so many years, what did you make of it?
I think it was immediate in its response. It was clearly thought out and they were ready to go with this. Alex, I was just looking at the list. There's the antitrust probe of Google, which isn't especially effective given the controls, the limitations of Google there. There are tariffs on agricultural equipment like tractors and other vehicles. There's tariffs on energy imports, coal and LNG, for example. Export controls on tungsten and other critical minerals. And then some of those companies like Calvin Klein or PVH Go are put on that entity list. So, it's a reasonable list in terms of just breadth of how they're responding to the US, but it's nowhere near the dollar for dollar kind of matching figure that you might have expected given the US to put 10% on all goods coming out of China. It is somewhat restrained. It's being interpreted as a signal, which is that, hey, look, we can retaliate further, but in the meantime, we're probably here to talk. And of course, we do know that coal is expected at some point between both leaders, Xi and Trump, over the coming days. We'll have to see if that changes the story or not.
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to go, Enda, because we saw yesterday with Mexico, the leaders of Mexico and Canada, looks like a phone call can fix a lot of things. And these Chinese tariffs don't kick into February 10th. So does that give some potential for, again, as you mentioned, a phone call between Trump and Xi, maybe an opportunity to kind of take some of this stuff off the front burner?
On paper, you would say absolutely. Maybe both leaders are looking for an off-ramp. Maybe there will be negotiations. The new administration and their executive orders that they put out said one of the first things they want to do is sit down and have a look at what happened in the original trade deal between China, the so-called Phase 1 trade deal between China and the US. That would all lend itself towards the new administration having an assessment, see where things are, and then come back. But nonetheless, things have moved pretty fast. I'm not sure anyone expected an almost full-scale trade war against Mexico and Canada that we came close to yesterday. If anything, President Trump has been very consistent in terms of his hawkishness on China and on the trade deficit with China, and of course in fentanyl and all the other issues as well. So there are plenty of analysts who are saying that of all of the news over the past week, the tariffs on China were probably not a surprise, maybe the timing of them more, but not a surprise. They were to be expected, and it does signal intent on President Trump's side. Now, of course, as you say, early days, we'll have to see how those talks go. But right here, right now, the US with new tariffs on all goods coming out of China, and that's something that they hadn't done before.
What's the ask here? So clearly with President Trump and Mexico and Canada, the ask was clear and had to do with fentanyl. What's the ask for China?
It's a whole different order of spectrum when it comes to the conversation, right? You're covering national security, you're covering IP protection, you're covering the merchandise goods deficit, the idea that the US doesn't think China buys enough stuff off of it. You've got the fentanyl issue. It's covering a whole range of issues here. And China's role on the global stage too, perhaps, in terms of its support for Russia, for example. But nonetheless, at least one thread on that is the merchandise goods deficit part of it. President Trump has highlighted that consistently. China in the past have signaled that they are willing to buy more US produce. Of course, Davos hadn't officially made a point without naming the US. That they're also willing to step up in the global market to buy things. So there are ways where, let's say, the merchandise goods deficit could be reached, could reach some kind of a midpoint on. But the national security, the technology, the export controls, the IP protection, fentanyl, the human rights issues, all of that's more complicated and probably maybe a different channel to the trade side of things.
And one could argue that the U.S. economy is in a stronger position than that of China. Therefore, the U.S. may have some leverage.
The committee vote on RFK Jr. nomination for HHS Secretary is coming up here.
real backdrop. US economy broadly doing okay. Obviously, there are areas of weakness, but consumers still spending. That means the US remains the engine of global growth. We know the China story, still hampered by the real estate slowdown, but they're still pushing hard on innovation, as we saw with DeepSeek last week. So yes, there is a view that the US has the upper hand, but also practically, because if you're talking about getting into an argument over merchandise goods, and I'll put tariffs on yours and you put tariffs on mine, well, China can't match that dollar for dollar because they don't buy the same amount of stuff off the US that the US buys out of China. So they're already at an imbalance in terms of starting point. But they can retaliate in kind of those measures we just talked about there. They can make life awkward for US companies operating in China. They can make life awkward for US personnel operating in China in terms of visas and the like. And they can also diversify and punish the US in other ways, diversify and find new markets, which have been doing when it comes to soybeans, for example, and other agricultural produce. But to be clear, the US economy is strong at the moment. Of course, at the upper hand if it comes to tariff tennis, but there are ways where China can respond and retaliate.
Yeah, I didn't think that like PVH was going to be on my bingo list for like companies that China was going to go after. All right, and thanks a lot, Enda Curran, Bloomberg senior economy reporter, joining us from DC. All right, coming up, David Havens, Bloomberg Intelligence senior credit analyst, will be joining us on that news that Apollo is raising a record from private wealth funds as credit keeps luring clients into the fold. And Michael McKee joining us. Take a look at the Joel stat.
I want to go to the committee, what Wyden is saying, Senator Wyden, for RFK Jr. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen peptide supplement. This is a powder. You take it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt. You can mix it in a smoothie. You can mix it with filtered water or with milk. There's lots of ways to use this. Take it once a day. It's going to improve your joints, your bones, your muscles, your skin, your hair, your nails. It has a very extensive amino acid profile that you can take a look at on my store. The label is available that you can take a look at more closely. I don't have time to read it all, but take this every day. Improve your joints, improve your bones, improve your muscles, improve your skin. This is something that you can also get through my anti-aging skincare. And in the anti-aging skincare box, you also get the structural nanosilver gel and vitamin C in the beginner's box with the collagen. Taking vitamin C and drinking filtered water together, what will happen is it'll cross-link, especially if you drink about 64 ounces of water throughout the day. It'll cross-link with the collagen and improve your dermal layer. And in the advanced box, you get everything in the beginner's box, but you also get C60 and resveratrol. C60 and resveratrol is really important to improve your basal layer where your skin cells are rejuvenating. All right. So the way the skincare boxes work is that it's dealing with the topical layer with the structural nanosilver gel, the dermal layer with the collagen and the vitamin C. You cross-link it with the drinking the filtered water, and the basal layer by taking the C60 and resveratrol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen peptides. It has dual purpose. And if you want to improve your skin health, get the anti-aging skin care boxes that I have, either the beginners or the advanced version. All right, with that said, let's go to the committee to see what they're saying about RFK.
Big Northwest leadership. How Paul Allen, on his own, invested $100 million to fight Ebola. I think of Bill Gates in the Gates Foundation, not just trying to eradicate polio and work on these issues, but to think of a regime that helps not just our nation's health, but global health. So with the UW, the University of Washington, the Cancer Research Center, all of these entities are a collaboration of saying we have to go faster in solving these threats to our nation as it relates to health. Now, we can have a big discussion, which I think you guys all want to have a big discussion about whether and when what happened in the Wuhan province. But I can tell you, we were the first city. We had the first patient. We had the first people who died in nursing homes. We had an emergency.
I've covered this so much, I really don't. I'm tired of it. All right. Let's go to China unveils retaliatory measures on U.S. imports. This is from CNBC's perspective. That was published 24 minutes ago. So let's see if there's a little bit of a difference between the way they spin it versus the way Bloomberg spins it.
File your taxes 100% free in the app if you didn't use us last year. Just file with TurboTax Do-It-Yourself by February 18th. All tax forms and...
Let's try to get China's perspective as well for more on these retaliatory tariffs. Let's get to Eunice Yoon in Beijing. Hey, Eunice.
Hey guys, well, China took a totally different approach from Canada and Mexico in regards to Trump's tariffs, which took effect here today. China announced several countermeasures, 10 to 15% tariffs on energy imports, farm gear, as well as trucks, export curbs on tungsten and other rare metals, an antitrust probe on Google, and then blacklisting PVH and alumina. Now, the impact of the measures vary, though for the most part, they don't appear to be very meaningfully damaging. The tariffs on the items that are not major U.S. exports to China. One interesting development, though, is that China did widen the scope of what it's willing to do when it comes to retaliation, basically signaling that it is willing to go specifically after U.S. companies. Overall, though, the move is likely a way for China to gain leverage over President Trump by putting more items onto the negotiating table if it does indeed turn out to have a larger trade negotiation with President Trump.
Eunice, what do we make of the unreliables list? We were talking about these two companies that, PVH is a relatively small company, Illumina, and then the move against Google, which, as far as I can remember, has not really had an operating presence in China for quite some time.
Right. Well, PVH had been flagged before for discrimination, the Chinese have said, against certain Chinese products, more specifically Xinjiang cotton. So the way that PVH as well as Illumina would be impacted is that this now means that their business in China will be restricted and that they could potentially have fines. So it's not very clear exactly what that's all going to, how this all going to pan out, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the punishments come in right away. So the Chinese government keeps it relatively gray. In that way, they could, do what they want at the end of the day with PVH. When it comes to Google, the reports that have been coming out is that it's not necessarily about Google itself, because as you guys well know, Google's blocked here, search engine can't be used. It only has, China accounts for only 1% of its global sales. However, what we might see is the Chinese government go after the Android system here. And so that's kind of the way in which they're being slapped with an anti-monopoly problem.
But Eunice, I think that when we look at what they could have gone after Apple very easily. They could have gone after Nike very easily. They did these analogs that are much less important. Coal, well, we know our coal prices have surged. They actually went down to the core, but there was a surge in coal because of Europe. Liquefied natural gas, these contracts are all spoken for. So if you had to pick things that were de minimis, you would have picked what they did. And what does that say to President Trump?
Right, so it shows that they are starting an opening bid, right? That they don't want to have anything that's particularly damaging to themselves or maybe to President Trump, but they're putting items onto the negotiating table that then they could remove and say that they've done something great. So I think what's going to be interesting is that we know what the Chinese want to see. They want to have the removal of the export controls on tech companies, the restrictions that they see on Chinese companies. They want the removal of the tariffs. But the question I think that a lot of people should be asking is what the Chinese would be really willing to put onto the table to really offer. So, for example, a level playing field, say, for foreign companies, which they might not be willing to do, the subsidization that a lot of countries have been complaining about, distorting global markets. Are the Chinese really going to put those items on the table?
Eunice, thank you. We'll be checking.
They're doing
in
the vote
plenty.
right now
I have a feeling.
with RFK.
Mr. Marshall? Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden?
No.
Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell? No. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett? Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner? Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse? Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan? Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto? Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren? Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders? Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith? Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan? No. Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock? No. Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch? Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman? Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
Shit. 14 to 13.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would like to make a statement. Since I asked my Republican colleagues at the outset, I'll go to the Republican side next. First, Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted aye today, and I want to just briefly explain why. I believe in my 65 years, I'll be 65 in August, that Mr. Kennedy will be one of the first people coming before who is in fact not a trained healthcare expert. He used this through the lens of an attorney. He's brought many lawsuits on food safety, vaccine safety, a number of other things. But Mr. Chair, I think it was Senator Warnock that said that the president said he was going to go wild in the Department of Health and Human Services. I hope he does. I hope he goes wild and actually finds a way to reduce the cost of healthcare. I hope he goes wild, and instead of having the discussions that we have had for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate of making Medicaid work and making people on Medicaid healthier, I hope he goes wild and figures out how to do it, because the status quo has not achieved much in the way of
It's a major win. Major
I hope
win.
he goes wild on food safety discussions so that we can actually improve our food safety supply. I hope he goes wild on the healthcare supply chains and, in fact, tries to make sure that drug prices go down instead of bludgeoning pharmaceutical companies, get everybody in the room and make sure that we do this right. Reduce the cost of bringing a vaccine to market, reduce the cost of bringing drugs and therapeutics to market. Look at the full supply chain, and somebody with a legal mind may do that. He is no health professional. In fact, he's the first, I believe, and since I've been alive, who's not been a healthcare professional in a scientific sense. But he is a professional in terms of carrying this forward and holding people accountable through the courts. And also, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to go much longer, but I had a lot of people call me earlier. I had people from the agriculture industry call me and express concerns, but I'm not aware of any organized, credible group, the Farm Bureau, the Department of Ag Commissioners, or others, who have said that we should vote against Mr. Kennedy. I heard people express their concerns about his pro-choice position. And yet I haven't seen any pro-life organization score this vote or recommend that we should vote against it. I heard him call the NRA a terrorist organization, and yet the NRA is silent on his confirmation. And so I've heard him say that GMOs are a concern. Hopefully we can convince him that not all GMOs are. It's feeding.
This is a major win for making America healthy again. All right. Now, it's going to be an uphill battle. You're going to have entrenched individuals in big pharma, at the CDC, at the FDA, at HHS. All these different stakeholders are going to be pushing back, and they're always going to be saying, well, he's not, he's not this and he's not that. The thing is, we have a major problem in the United States. And that is chronic disease that can be reversed and prevented with proper diet, proper exercise, and a proper holistic approach. All right. Children today have way more diabetes than children of my generation. Children today have way more early heart disease than children of my generation. Children today have way more psychiatric problems than children of my generation. Something is happening in the food supply, in the water supply, in the technologies that we use on a daily basis. Our society is unhealthy. And if we keep on having a disease model healthcare system where you have to have a disease and here's a pill, here's a treatment for the disease, then we're not going to get forward in having a healthy society. We have to go into a prevention mode society, a prevention mode, a holistic approach to mitigate many of the chronic diseases that we have in the United States. Heart disease, diabetes, huge, huge problems. And a lot of that is because of our lifestyle. You want to cut healthcare costs? Reduce the incidences of diabetes and heart disease, and you would radically change the cost structure. But Big Pharma doesn't want to do that because Big Pharma makes billions of dollars selling cardiac medication, billions of dollars selling diabetic medication. Now do you understand what RFK Jr. is up against? Big money. It's not about health. It's all about money. If it was about health, why isn't there more orphan diseases being treated through pharmaceuticals? Because there's no money in it. There's no money in it. There's not enough incidences of that disease, of that orphan disease. But they'll go after weight loss and diabetes and heart disease and psychiatric issues, cancer. But a lot of these things can be mitigated by just proper diet, exercise, proper supplementation, a holistic approach, integrative medicine, preventative medicine. If you prevent these diseases, you are far better off. If you early screen cancer, your chances of survival are radically higher, instead of waiting until the symptoms happen and then all of a sudden they can give you chemo, but you'll only live for maybe 24 months. But you'll be shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. Big money in cancer therapy, big money. But if you do early screening, your chances of needing chemotherapy radically go down. Your chances of being able to be surviving if you catch something in stage 1 or stage 2, your survival rates are radically higher. That's where the focus should be. Not if we make this molecule or if we make this messenger RNA and we have this, immune therapy for this type of cancer. No. Early detection and then get it out. That is more bang for your buck and less side effects.
Else did you wish to speak?
I did, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, for your statement. I want a disruptor in the healthcare system and one leading it. I don't want a destroyer. And there's 3 issues before any nominee that we have to consider. One is character, another is competence, and the third is priorities. We did not have Carolyn Kennedy here, but she gave a statement. And she said that Bobby
was able to attract people through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risk and break the rules. And those might be desirable qualities if it was accompanied by sober judgment and behavior. Because the person who leads a major organization has to have the confidence of the people that work for him. And
the HHS is a conduit for Big Pharma. It's captured by lobbying groups. Can someone honestly say that HHS, the CDC, and the FDA has done wondrous things for the health of Americans? No, the health of Americans have been declining. Not only that, our IQs have been declining. Not just our health, our IQs have been declining. There was a study that was published from European researchers looking at different countries. And I believe their study was released in 2022, maybe it was 2023. But one of the conclusions was the United States average IQ is below 100 now. It's 97. 97. Now, I suspect that it has a lot to do with lifestyle. The health and the IQ problem that we're having in the United States is because of lifestyle. That means the stuff you're shoving in your mouth. That means the screen time, the lack of exercise, the over-reliance of automation. A lot of people don't even know how to do simple math, let alone trig or calculus. It's a big problem. We got to get our society healthy, and it's not a disease model. That's where the failure of modern medicine. That's a failure of modern medicine, the disease model. It's a prevention model that's going to make society better. You get more bang for your buck.
Into healthcare. Mr. Kennedy's priority was about his view of vaccines. It was not about making healthcare more affordable and accessible. And in response to really a very direct and easy, open-ended question from Senator Kennedy.
Whatever. They're always digging up the whole inoculation issue. You know, and the thing is that, you know, that we're been told by Oracle, by Larry Ellison and the whole Stargate that you'll be able to get, you know, some sort of vaccine or some sort of inoculation to treat your cancer, you know, using AI and all this with Stargate, right? The problem is that there are processes that mutate. There are proteins that mutate that are internal to the cell, and there are proteins that mutate that are external to the cell, that are on the surface. Now, if it's on the surface of the cell, then having some sort of antibody or some sort of immunotherapy to attach to that mutated cell signal is promising in terms of treatment. The problem comes in is that cells divide and mutate even further. So it will drift away from whatever antibodies you've created. Not just that, some of those surface proteins are very similar to normal surface proteins. So you may actually create an antibody that creates an autoimmune system disorder. They don't tell you that. Trust me, I know a lot about this subject. And, oh, by the way, how are you going to target an internal cellular process or fusion protein in a cancer cell with just the normal lipid nanoparticle that has a messenger RNA in it? Because a lipid nanoparticle is not targeting. It can go into any cell. So how are you going to get those antibodies that are created from a lipid nanoparticle, from a messenger RNA, to target a fusion protein that's inside a cell, not a surface protein? Because if it was that easy, they would have already done it with monoclonals. It's a lot more complicated. A lot more complicated. So how are you going to target the lipid nanoparticle? Because you're going to have the lipid nanoparticle creating messenger RNAs that are supposed to create proteins that are inhibiting the fusion protein. How do you get it into the cancer cell? You can't. So you can't use lipid nano. You got to use viral-like particles, VLPs. And you have to specially engineer them to be able to dock specifically on that cancer cell. So the delivery mechanism is far more complicated than what Larry Ellison from Oracle has to say. Oh, trust me, I know this subject matter really well. So they're selling you a bill of goods that has a lot of biological problems. Forget about the injury, just the ability for it to have efficacy. It's problematic. And I just gave you 2 big reasons why. But a lot of people out there will say that they understand this subject. Unfortunately, a lot of those people don't. Once again, I got to keep on teaching people.
Of understanding what tariff threats are is understanding what sectors they hit and the impact on those sectors. There's been a lot of reporting about how automobile companies, for example, were very concerned in calling up the White House and the administration over the weekend. So I wanted to get more on this. And joining us now is Antoine Vania-Jones. He's Bloomberg NEF Head of Trade and Supply Chains. And I should point out that Bloomberg NEF covers everything that has to do with commodities, power, transport, industry, buildings, and ag sectors. So anything that you need, they cover, and they help companies kind of figure out different strategies.
If, you know, a lot of these people like Alex Jones thinks that they understand messenger RNA, which he doesn't. But the thing is that you know, you keep on hearing in the news, oh, they'll just, you know, create this messenger RNA and wrap it in a lipid nanoparticle, and then that, you know, you'll be able to create a antibody for whatever, a cancer antigen on the surface of a cell. Again, I said it's very problematic. If it was that easy, it would have been already done with monoclonals. All right, but the thing is, it's not that effective. Now, take it one step further. Why do you think they're having such a problem with H5 and H7 spikes for influenza in clinical trials if it was so easy? Because it's not so easy. So if they're having a hard time being able to have efficacy on a pathogen that's relatively easy to create, you know, in terms of the antibodies, and they're having problems for the efficacy of that, don't you think that they're going to have a whole lot of problems with cancer antigens that mutate and change and are similar to other cellular surface proteins? Because our understanding of immunotherapy is weak. As a medicine, the understanding of immunotherapy is in its nascent. We're in its nascent phase. But you'll hear people say, oh, it's so easy. No, it's not so easy. By far, it's not easy. And again, a lot of those fusion proteins that you need to target are internal into the cell. That means you have to have a very strong targeting system. The nanoparticles aren't targeting. So if it was so easy, why are they having clinical trial problems with just garden variety pathogens? Because you're being sold a bill of goods that don't work. Or if it works, it's not that effective. You know, there's a spectrum of efficacy. But, you know, Alex Jones doesn't tell you that stuff. because he doesn't understand. And the experts he puts on a show don't fully understand. Blah, 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 blah.
60% tariff, and it wouldn't really make US-made manufacturing, US-made factories competitive from a cost perspective. What matters a lot more is, are there going to be more measures coming around in terms of restricting the rollout of Chinese technology? And that probably matters a lot more than tariffs. And that's something that the Republican Party has been extremely keen on over the last few months.
One of the things I think we got a better appreciation for during the pandemic was this just-in-time inventory that we all grew up with. Maybe that's not the best type of strategy.
No shit.
Have manufacturers, has the supply chain kind of warped away?
JIT, just-in-time delivery, was to squeeze the lemon and prevent inventory costs, carryover inventory costs. The problem is there's not a redundancy. Does your body run, obviously your body runs on energy, but it has stored energy just in case it can't find food. So we're not on just in time. You know, our body doesn't work JIT, just in time. For our energy source, why should a plant for automotive work just on time? You need to have a source effect or a queue or something that there's a buildup of inventory. So just in case there's some problem, that you have parts available to assemble. This idea that, you know, you dwindle your supply of subsystems at the plant within hours or days is ridiculous. It needs to have some redundancy. Now you take it even one step further, and you need supply chains where you're not just dependent on one country or dependent on one company. You got to have a healthy plethora of suppliers. So just in case one supplier is having problems financially, your assembly isn't affected. You can go to another company. You got to have some redundancy. So this idea of squeezing the lemon on the balance sheet and streamlining the inventory to the absolute minimum is not how natural biological processes work. Now, through evolution and all these biological processes, you would think that we would be able to learn something from that. But you have the bean counters in Wall Street saying this company has to improve its margins or we're going to reduce the stock price. The companies are forced to go to a very lean GIT system. But that's not making the economy able to absorb shocks. You need redundancy. So it's this balance between profitability and having robustness. And unfortunately, Wall Street almost always picks the profitability side of the equation instead of the robustness of the company or of the industry. All right, so they're on commercial break. So let me do a commercial break. It's great that RFK Jr. has elevated to the HHS secretary. Okay, so what basically it is that the nomination for health secretary advanced through the committee, putting him on track to be confirmed by the full Senate. So he was nominated by the committee. He has to be confirmed by the Senate. All right. So he's got one more step to go through. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric. This is an antioxidant. It'll soak up free radicals. It'll also bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines. You want to bring down inflammation and boost up your immune system. Talking about immune system, taking vitamin C and magnesium will do that. But it'll also help with your skin. Drink it with filtered water. If you're not feeling well during the cold season, guess what? Take a double dose. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. And omega-3. Like I was saying before, Americans have heart disease. And it starts when you're about 16 years old. But it doesn't turn symptomatic until about in your 20s or 30s for the typical patient. Maybe even your 40s, depending on how healthy you are. But the bottom line is that heart disease is starting in your teens. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the omega-3. Omega-3 helps to bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels. That means it's helping to improve your total cholesterol. It helps to prevent red blood cells from sticking so you don't have overclotting. That's really important. Remember about 2020? And omega-3 also helps to bring down that systemic inflammation. And when you're bringing down systemic inflammation and you are improving your total cholesterol profile and reducing the chances of clotting, you're improving your cardiovascular health. And you're bringing down that inflammation, you're bringing down that LDL, and you're slowing down plaque accumulation in the media of your blood vessel. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take omega-3. Now, if you follow what I've been saying about how to improve your cardiovascular health through a holistic approach, proper diet, exercise, proper supplementation, all that, right? And you're vigilant, and you are compliant on the protocol, then what you're going to notice is that your health is improving. And when your health is improving, you'll have better blood flow for your cardiovascular system. When you have better blood flow, then your other systems, your other organs, and your other tissues are going to perform better because they have nutrients and they have blood flow. You ever look at a patient that has really poor blood flow in the legs? It's really bad. Or the problems where they have right-started heart failure and the actual pool, the blood is pooling up because the right atrium and the right ventricle are dysfunctional, especially the right ventricle. And you got pooling of blood going right up the jugular, and it pulses. You really want that? You really want that? I highly recommend don't go down that road, because it's a road that you're not going to survive. So mitigate it. Start early. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation. It is in your power to reverse a lot of the chronic diseases that we have in the United States. Not all diseases are because of lifestyle. Some diseases are genetic, but most are not.
Live coverage from Capitol Hill in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
All right, I want to go to Fox Business here for a second.
When you hear music like this, you want to take your clothes off.
Joining us now, the founder of Public on Substack, the one and only Michael Schellenberger. Michael, we always love talking to you and reading what you have to say. Great to have you back on. What's your take on this? Let's show the footage, because Democrats were dancing at their DNC meeting this weekend, Michael. A new Quinnipiac poll, record low approval of just 31% for Democrats. Trump's at a high in the polls. What is going on with the Democrat Party?
Well, yeah, great to be with you. I mean, I think, look, obviously Kamala Harris was a super weak candidate. I mean, everybody's now acknowledging that, including on the Democratic Party side. That's obvious. She was unpopular when she first ran in 2020. She was an unpopular candidate. The campaign was that she needed to be hired by Biden as VP in order for it really for the diversity issue. It was a very weak candidate, but I think the problems for the Democrats go much deeper than that. They go right to what does the party stand for? What's its vision for the country? It's got itself on the wrong side of a bunch of issues, including transgender medical care for children. That's turned out to be one of the biggest medical scandals in history. We saw in this poll from the New York Times over the weekend that most Americans genuinely believe that Democrats are a party of elitists who don't care about them, who care about things like climate change and transgenderism, not about the things that are their main concern, including migration, the economy, and this massive shift that's happening in terms of foreign policy, where Trump is moving away from the United States playing police officer to the world. So really just see a Republican Party that has a lot of clarity about what it stands for and what its priorities are, and a Democrat Party that's really divided and weakened by this obsession with race, with sex, with gender, and nothing really positive or visionary to sell to the American people for its vision for the United States of America.
Yeah, you just nailed it. I mean, that's what we've been hearing too, Michael. So, you know, they're not focusing on the middle class. They're not focusing on the blue collar worker. They're focusing on this. Watch this inanity, this craziness. Listen to this.
Rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. At this point are currently 2 male and 2 female. In order to be gender balanced, we must have 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender.
You fight on.
That is the dumbest thing, almost the dumbest thing I've heard in my life. I'll tell you, the Democratic Party and the ultra-lib agenda is out of their mind. They're literally insane.
They couldn't even figure out what, by the way, the top of that with Jamie Harrison, they couldn't even figure out their rules for their votes.
Yeah, I mean, look, it comes across like a nihilistic cult because that's the ideology that's taken over the party. I mean, when I say nihilistic, I mean pretty anti-human at this point. It's dehumanizing. I mean, look at the way he was talking about the need to have people from different racial categories. I mean, that's something you would expect, you know, out of the worst racist periods in American life. You've seen this grotesque medical experimentation taking place on children in an effort to change their gender or their sex. You see a party that says that the world is coming to an end, therefore kids don't need to, you know, people shouldn't have kids because the world's going to end from climate change. It's a dystopian, dark, divided, racialist party. Who wants to be on board with that? No wonder only 30% of Americans have positive feelings towards the Democrats. It's a party that just feels, you know, absolutely not only disconnected from the major concerns of the American people, but offering a vision that's mostly, you know, pretty negative on the human race and on the United States in particular.
Your points are so well taken. They have been dehumanizing children, dehumanizing people in general. Michael, can you really call us the Democrat Party? Is it totally something else? Is it just the far left party?
I mean, it's so incredible. It's really a self-fulfilling prophecy in a Shakespearean way.
It's their ultra-left stupid party. There is no Democratic Party anymore. It's just the ultra-left. I mean, it's just nuts. They're just absolutely nuts. Their soul is so dark that, you know, that they're gonna fail. They're gonna eat themselves, and they're gonna fail. They're not part of that whole 3-pillar concept of God, country, and family. It's crazy. It's crazy. How can America have reached this point of stupidity?
You have Trump 8 years ago, or 9 years ago, probably wouldn't have just, you know, gone after the deep state in the way that he is now. But the Democrats they weaponized the deep state to try to put him in prison
Now he's got no choice but to clean house.
Michael Schellenberger, a pleasure to have you on the show. It's great to listen to you and hear you.
All right, so that's that. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg here for a sec.
Manager of fixed income and Federated Hermes. He's awesome on fixed income, and we're going to get his take, particularly after 2-year inflation break-evens continue to rise. And Geetha Ranganathan, Bloomberg Intelligence, will join us on Spotify Beats, and we're definitely going to look ahead at Disney's earnings coming out after the bell. Before the bell tomorrow. But let's kick it all off for you with a Bloomberg Business Flash. And for that, we go to John Tucker.
And right now, the major averages, they're slightly higher. The NASDAQ 100 actually in the lead, up 1.2% right now, 246 points higher. The S&P 500, 34 points higher. That's up 0.6%. And right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is 30 points higher. This is a really interesting reaction. You had Robert F. Kennedy Jr. endorsed by the Senate Finance Committee to head the Department of Health and Human Services. He's been called an anti-vaxxer in reaction. Shares of vaccine makers, they are under pressure. Moderna, the ticker symbol mRNA, those shares right now down 4.5%. New York-based Pfizer shares.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome that you have the potential elevation of RFK Jr. He needs to be confirmed at the full vote in the Senate, right? But the thing is that there are people that are shorting Moderna by more than 4% just because of that news. I mean, that's the beauty of watching the market, is that you can have something that news that happens during the day that really affects markets. Now, sometimes it doesn't, and it's just kind of like a slow news day. But there are other times where you can have things that move. Now, the tariffs going back and forth, that's volatile and it moves markets. But again, I'm for RFK Jr. I believe in the whole idea that Americans have been going down the wrong road in terms of their health and wellness, and a big part of it is lifestyle and the chemicals that are in their food that are causing some of these problems. It's not the only reason, but a big part of it. And RFK Jr., I want him in. I want him as HHS, but he's not a professional in the healthcare industry. He's a lawyer. We can't have him run HHS. Well, HHS has been harming Americans for decades with people that were healthcare professionals.
So they're 11 and 12 on the year.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, we did. Wahoo wah.
Going nowhere.
I don't know anything we're saying.
That was a good win. Nora, what are you looking at in this market? John Tucker was just reporting that we got the indexes trading higher. What are you looking at?
Well, there's lots to keep an eye on this morning. We've got energy and communication services both as the best performing, or they are the top two best performing sectors in the S&P 500. But I want to take a look at Estee Lauder. This stock is down some 20%. It's seen its best day in more than 3 months. Now, this company has really been struggling, particularly with getting a lot of traction in China and Korea. The company is projecting that its revenue will fall 10 to 12% in the current quarter. So that's not good news. But on top of that, Estee Lauder is saying that it plans to eliminate up to 7,000 jobs in a corporate overhaul. Now, the new CEO is planning to focus on gaining market share and also trying to point more toward high-end cosmetics. But I mean, this has really been a stock that's been struggling, down already 9% in the first few weeks of the year.
Yeah, this one really perplexed me because it's a whole, invest in your face is huge. And we saw during during COVID that this was the kind of area that did really well.
Right.
So it feels like it's an execution potential issue specifically with Estee Lauder.
For sure. It's very interesting here.
Merck, what you got?
Merck. So I'm keeping an eye here. We're seeing shares falling for their worst day in almost 5 years and their lowest intraday level since 2022. We're seeing shares down as much as 12%. And this is after Merck, it had its cancer-preventing Gardasil vaccine. It halted those shipments to China. And this is a move that's expected to last at least through mid-year. So really it seems like China's this overarching story when we look at geopolitical situations as well as Estee Lauder and now Merck. So we see that the stock Merck has shed more than 20% over the past year through Monday's close. Not great news here.
No, that was amazing. I always think of Merck as just kind of this blue chip, defensive stock. Yep, yep.
And also it's due to lack of demand. So like they're stopping it because the demand wasn't there. That's definitely perplexing.
Something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. All right, we can't ignore Palantir.
Yeah, so on the flip side, here's some good news for you. So Palantir is the best performing stock right now in the S&P 500 by percentage. This company is hitting its highest level ever, up more than 25%. And over the past 12 months, if you take a look, the stock has risen more than 500%, which is obviously a spectacular gain for.
I mean, just a
investors.
few
This is
weeks,
all
just
on the
a couple weeks ago, it was in the 70s. Now it's at 105.
election, but the CEO did say that he sees untamed demand and they are bolstering their outlook. And so it's really just a positive outlook here. And we see Wall Street celebrating.
You know, Dan Ives from Wedbush Securities was on Bloomberg Advanced Television this morning. We saw him walking out of the TV studio and grabbed him by his lapel of his gaudy pink jacket and his green pants or whatever. Brought him in here. And I had to, do a little bit of a victory lap on this Palantir, but he came out kind of late on this name. He wasn't one of the original analysts, so it was already ripping. And he came out on this name probably 18 months ago with new coverage, and he just gave what I thought was an incredibly impassioned, strong buy on that stock. This is why it's going to work. This is why you have to own it, even after it's had a big run. Man, was he right.
Mm-hmm. He really was.
I mean, wow. If you're looking for that second or third derivative on AI, Palantir seems to be one of the.
And I'm curious how much further it can run. I mean, if you look, it's February, second month of the year, stock is up 39% already.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Norma. Really appreciate it. Norma Melinda joining us, Bloomberg Equities reporter. But untamed demand. I mean, that sets expectations a touch high.
Yeah, well, it's the folks at Huawei. I mean, Jensen Huang at NVIDIA, they similar type of language over the last 4 or 5 quarters.
Fair enough, fair enough.
So.
All right, let us move to the world of DC and geopolitics as well. We're obviously waiting for any readout from a potential call between President Xi of China and President Trump. In addition to that, President Trump today will be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. I wanted to get an update for what to expect from that conversation. Jonathan Panikoff is joining us, Atlantic Council Director of the Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative. Jonathan, what do we expect?
Well, thanks very much for having me. Oh, look, I think from Trump's perspective, this is about level setting and reminding Prime Minister Netanyahu that unlike with President Biden, you can't treat him the same way if he expects to get his help. And I think that message is going to be sent pretty loudly across a variety of lines of effort. And for Netanyahu, I think this is about 2 big things. One is Gaza and trying to get ahead of the potential that a phase 2 might not happen, and trying to say, look, if it doesn't happen, it's not on Israel's responsibility. It's because of Hamas, because the security conditions are going to be insufficient, and more long-term, getting ahead of trying to figure out how to deal with Iran and ensure that if the Israelis decide that they need to strike Iran, the U.S., if it's not going to actually join with them, isn't stopping that.
Jonathan, can you remind us kind of the position of Netanyahu, his political position within Israel? How strong or weak is it? And if I'm President Trump, does that influence how I deal with this guy?
Yeah, it's precarious right now, but it's also been like that for a long time.
Now, my understanding with MicroStrategy's with their buying of Bitcoin has been halted, or they're reducing their purchases. So that may be putting some pressure on the movement of Bitcoin. I saw that announcement yesterday or early this morning.
Benny Gantz, the former defense minister, for instance, the current opposition leader, has said that they will advance a ceasefire and support Netanyahu if it ensures that all the hostages get out, if they get through all 3 phases, if that's what needed, because his right-wing coalition collapses. Netanyahu is very hesitant to do that because he's facing a number of legal issues. He really is desperate to stay out of prison, which is a real potential because he's up on corruption charges. And if his coalition in the right wing is completely collapsed, then he's got to rely on the centrists, and they're almost certainly not going to back him for the long term in allowing him to stay in office beyond the ceasefire. So he's got some serious domestic challenges that he's trying to weigh as he also deals with the Gaza ceasefire and longer term with Iran.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because there is a ceasefire. So Netanyahu coming to talk to Trump, that conversation clearly would have been very different like 6 months ago. So what's the goal versus what we might have expected if they were still actively at war?
So I think for Netanyahu, the goal is to set the stage to ensure that if the minimum security requirements aren't met, and at the moment, I'm not quite sure how they're going to be, if for phase 2, in which Israel is supposed to completely withdraw from the Gaza Strip, if the security requirements aren't met, either through an Arab force, an international force, more contractors we've seen from the U.S. companies going in to ensure that Israel's borders are secure, that its people are secure, that Hamas doesn't regain power. If that isn't the minimum agreed upon status, then Netanyahu's going to say, look, we have no choice but to go back in after this phase 1 ends. So they've just started negotiations on phase 2 today, but I think he's trying to set the ground so that Trump doesn't push back. Trump's been very clear. He wants this war over. He wants to get to a phase 2 and a phase 3. I think Netanyahu's going to try to thread the needle here so that the blame doesn't fall on him if the Israelis don't get there and decide they have to go back into Gaza at the end of phase 1.
Jonathan, you mentioned
All right.
Iran.
I'm going to go to Cash Jordan here, talking about New York City subway crime issues and everything. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. It's a gene expression cofactor. It helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis, especially if they're infected. And you couple this with K2, vitamin K2, MK7. All right, you take these two together. All right, and when you take these two together, you're helping with your cardiovascular system and also your bone density. So please go to my store, take the vitamin K2 and the D3. Now, another great stack with D3 and K2 is nattokinase, but you can take nattokinase separately also. Nattokinase will help to break up clots because it's fibrinolytic, but it will also help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. This is synergistic with omega-3, D3, and K2. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nattokinase. All right, let's go to Cash Jordan here. So we can see how Gotham is getting worse.
On the subways, screaming at passengers just a couple of weeks later, and we pressed the mayor about his surging officers.
So, as armed police and National Guard troops flood the subway to stop violence, the city is undermining their work by allowing crime above ground, along with behavior eerily similar to what the mayor and the governor say they want to rein in down here. However, by redeploying police and neglecting other areas of town where this is happening, New York's underground crime wave has no hope of ever disappearing, and it's only going to get worse.
It is a fact that some of the violent crime in the New York City transit system is coming at the hands of severely unstable people. So yes, Mayor Adams says the increased patrols underground are important, but making the system safer will take more than that.
It's like hell on earth.
As soon as you come up from the subway at 149th Street and Melrose Avenue in the Bronx, you know something is very wrong. In just a one-block span, we witnessed money changing hands, all in broad daylight.
It's just talking, you should talk to them and give them help. There's always gun violence. It's always fighting up and on, all up the block, all up and down this block.
NYPD officers are now being assigned to every subway train rolling through the city in the overnight hours.
Although we have brought down crime, people are feeling
in New York, the center of the universe, run by liberals, have destroyed the city.
This salon manager says staff and customers don't feel safe coming to her 3rd Avenue business. She showed us videos outside her shop.
It's very dangerous.
Shop owners say they constantly have to call 311 and police to clear encampments and paraphernalia, like you can see here at my feet.
So in another I told you so moment, unpoliced crime in one part of town is now spilling out into the rest of the city. And what nobody in charge of securing our subways wants to admit is that the lawless environment we allow on our streets has a lot to do with all of the problems we're seeing down here. And this is terrifying to our leaders because their efforts to stop crime in the subway, which includes SWAT team style police patrols at times, aren't working. Something that is not the fault of the NYPD, who find themselves short-staffed, overworked, and restricted from taking down the criminals, starting fires, and assaulting others in our subway system, because after those criminals get arrested, a progressive justice system feels bad for them and releases them. Sure, the police can and do make arrests, but oftentimes those arrests are fruitless because the criminals, they just get released right back out onto the streets where they can commit the same crimes over and over again. It's a revolving door of justice. On top of that, the city's efforts to expand the use of involuntary removal and commitment are facing an uphill battle as well. Not just because of the sheer numbers of individuals living in our subway who are unable to care for themselves and may be a danger to themselves or others, but also because even when someone who's in dire need of intervention is removed, that person might need long-term treatment and care to get clean, yet they often get prematurely discharged from the hospital and then come right back here within just a few days, some with a sense of resentment towards a system that tried to help them but was legally prevented from doing so. Which brings us to the real reason why we've got this crime wave in our subways. We're neglecting crime up here on our streets while trying to police it down here, and while we're doing it, the tools we're using are wholly ineffective. And sadly, as more law enforcement resources are dumped into our transit system, the problems New York City's experiencing will only get worse, because every cop not on the street is one less cop around to deal with the lawlessness and destructive behavior being cultivated above ground, which then makes its way below ground, where it finally appears on the evening news, usually after something terrible has happened. And as you're about to see, this is happening in spite of the NYPD throwing everything it has at the problem. So here we are at the 14th Street Union Square subway station, a station that perfectly encapsulates the losing battle law enforcement is fighting against disorder in the subway. This place has its own police station, yet right around the corner from the police station, you have people who are obviously in need of help who live here on a full-time basis. And several stations within walking distance of this one look the exact same way, but the problem is our leaders are worried about issues down here which don't start down here. No, instead, a lot of what you're seeing down here in the subway started up on the streets.
It's like hell on earth. As soon as you come up from the subway at 149th Street and Melrose Avenue in the Bronx, you know something is very wrong. In just a one-block span, we witnessed money changing hands, all in broad daylight, is what people here call it.
So let's ask ourselves an obvious question. If there's a subway station at 149th Street, and right when you walk up the stairs and get onto the streets, residents describe the area as being hell on earth, what do you think the ramifications of allowing that to go on forever are going to be throughout the entire city and the subway itself? Are we really so naive in New York that we think allowing rampant problems above ground isn't going to cause the same exact thing to happen below ground, especially when it's freezing out? And why is it when you walk through some of our subway terminals, you see the exact same things the news is describing on the ground? It's the exact same situation just happening indoors where it's warm instead of outdoors where it's cold. However, this gives the city an opportunity to recognize just how bad its crime problems really are. And believe it or not, now would actually be a great time for the city to concentrate its resources on mental health outreach and really make a difference, because a lot of the folks that need help are down here right now. But not only is that not happening, residents who live in the Bronx up on 149th, they're losing their neighborhood just because it's not as important as Union Square is, where all the police are stationed. But you know something, this is a subway station near New York University and a lot of pricey real estate. Perhaps the police are all down here to keep progressive yuppies believing there aren't actually problems in New York. However, as we're seeing, New York's problems are so bad, even in this very station, they are visible despite the presence of law enforcement. But sadly, the problems going on above ground are way worse than anything you'll see down here.
On the book of scare.
This salon manager says staff and customers don't feel safe coming to her Third Avenue business. It's very dangerous. Shop owners say they constantly have to call 311 and police to clear the evidence.
Yeah, that's New York, safest big city in America, baby. You know what's disgusting about this is, according to criminal sympathizers, all of the crime that people who have a problem with crime are talking about, it's all imaginary. Yet, you've got residents recording real videos on their phones, suffering real financial problems at their businesses because of it. Yet all around us in the New York City subway, there's evidence of this problem. It's just that everyone's ignoring it, at least everyone who could do something about it. And that's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the people who need treatment. It's certainly not fair to the residents of this city. On top of that, nobody seems to want to admit that there is a problem in this city with people engaging in addictive behaviors which incapacitate and imperil them to a degree where they need long-term help, yet we're only able to offer short-term solutions in many cases. And when you allow that to go on long enough, it should be no surprise that rioters and a police like
It's a
this
classic example of what I'm saying. America's going straight to hell. Straight to hell. And it goes back to those pillars, God, country, and family. You start eroding those pillars and you get this stuff.
Unsafe, especially when it's glaringly obvious that we don't have enough police to keep everyone down here safe throughout the entire system at once.
They're calling for ongoing enforcement, including a task force dedicated to cleaning up what's known as the Hub, an area near 3rd Avenue and East 149th Street.
We're calling upon the state to grant the mayor the authority he needs to relocate those with severe mental illness and severe chemical addiction.
So the mayor's made it pretty clear he wants the authority to help people, but if the state's not going to give it to him, things are just going to continue the way that they have been for quite some time. And there's no way the city's ever going to fix crime on the streets or down here. In this area of the Bronx called the Hub is apparently a real mess and has been for a very long time. There are constant problems. The city's constantly dealing with it. And apparently the latest intervention that this neighborhood received was back in November, just a couple of months ago. But that was before temperatures became very, very cold and everyone started making their way below ground. And here's how that intervention worked. 35 people were arrested. A whole bunch of stuff was thrown out. The city wiped its hands and moved on. Yet the problems just came right back, totally negating all of the work that the city did and all of
That's something that's happening in New York right now. That because of the temperatures going down, today is a little bit warmer, but the temperature's going down, and people are getting sick because their nose is running, and then bacteria starts to grow. It gets into their lungs, and then voila, you have some sort of bronchitis. So it's a lot of people are sick in New York right now.
They backed off too early, which is what happens here. And this is how New York City solves all of its problems. It does the bare minimum to say that it was taken care of. And after the news cameras are invited to film the short-term results of a police raid or a sanitation cleanup, everybody moves on. And the cleanup efforts in this part of town, and also down here at the subway to some extent, are useless. They're never going to go far enough to get long-lasting change, just short-term change. And in a few months, we're going to be right back down here dealing with all of the same issues, because the issues are going to come back.
The governor's office responded in a statement saying, in part, "We're not taking public safety advice from a politician who supported defunding $1 billion from the NYPD. They also say the governor is committed to bail reform and fixing involuntary commitment. Community members say they need real sustained action."
Isn't that strange?
You know what I know? This is my observation, right? New York is declining, but it's not like a Detroit, all right? But it's declining, and there is rampant crime. The crime seems to be associated with the legalization of certain drugs, and that there is also this illegal immigrant issue soaking up front funds of the city, but also the gang illegal immigrant crime that's taking place. So there's a few things going on in New York that's happening. And it's also happening in Boston, all right? But not at the same level, all right? There's a lot of homeless, there's a lot of drug issues in the city, in Boston, downtown Boston, and in New York. But it trickles up through Braintree and all the way to Kendall and Harvard Square and all that, right? So you have lots of people at the Harvard Square by the Starbucks or right, you know, they congregate, you know, right at the sub, you know, at the T, the subway. That's their version of like the MTA. And, you know, it's just, it makes the environment unsafe. Now, it used to not be that way. You know, pre, you know, COVID, yes, you had some homeless, but it was somewhat controlled, right? In 2017, it wasn't as bad. In 2018, it wasn't as bad, all right? But you fast forward to where we're at right now, and there's just a lot of homeless everywhere, a lot. So you have this problem, especially in South Station over in Boston. And it's really rampant in New York, right? Now, I suspect that this is happening in other inner cities, like Chicago, right? But something has to be done to get the crime and the homelessness off the streets. Now, people that are homeless, it's sometimes not their fault. But many times it is. But the thing is that not solving the problem is only going to make the society continue to devolve, spiral downward. So you can't ignore it. You have to find some sort of solution. And what you know, what do you do? And it doesn't seem that these inner cities have been able to come up with good solutions that are long lasting. And because New York has a big population and, you know, it's big, but it's geographically in a condensed area, you know, a lot is happening in this city. And the crime is just out of control. I'm not sure that they can reverse this anytime soon. I feel as though we've gone beyond the Giuliani days, and now we're going back into the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1970s. So the city isn't in the upswing. Now, my personal belief is that inflection point probably started the last term of the Mayor Bloomberg. That's looking at this whole thing. I think that it just started with the increase in crime in that last term. But it really accelerated after he left and de Blasio came in. But the city is out of control. I was hoping that Mayor Adams was going to, you know, clean up the mess, but obviously that didn't happen. But it's out of control. It's out of control, and it has a lot of different reasons for it. The legalization of drugs is a big problem. The homelessness is a big problem. The theft, the illegal immigrants is a big problem. The lack of funds. It's just the city. I mean, is New York a canary in the coal mine for America? You know, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe all of America is going to turn into a shithole.
After they're arrested, discharges people way too soon from a treatment facility. Everybody wonders why we've got a crime problem, and now suddenly politicians are saying, yeah, I'm against those laws. So be shocked when you realize that we've got elections coming up very soon in New York for both the mayor and the governor. However, it looks like things had to get to a point where affluent areas of town were negatively affected by stuff going on way uptown in an area that gets gets neglected. The sad reality for New York is that it's got way too much on its plate to fight crime everywhere at once. The city can either concentrate all of its resources on trying to fight crime at a limited number of subway stations and trains underground, or it can spread its resources throughout the entire city and get no results. Or it can get a short-term result in the subway, which is probably the best New Yorkers can expect. And that means, as you're about to see, that things down here are probably going to get a lot worse before they get any better, in spite of the fact that the mayor has a new plan to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on treatment facilities for the mentally ill. So it's kind of strange that New York City now, all of a sudden, has leaders that across all spectrums of the political aisle want to do something about helping those who are down here and are down and out, while doing everything in their power to keep people safe as they try to go to work and live their lives. Yet, as excited as some of you might be that change could finally come to this city, you've got to understand that it's not the mayor's fault or the governor's fault that we've got a series of
You know, another thing is the way people dress, right? And maybe I'm being too, I don't know, pedantic or whatever. But the thing is that, and I don't even know the brand that does this, but there are an awful lot of black males that are wearing jeans that has this label. It's designed as part of the jean that's hanging out of the right rear pocket. And it just makes someone look schlubby. All right. So this whole urban streetwear schlubbiness seems to be like the thing in New York now, especially with young, and when I say young, I'm talking about maybe teenage to maybe in their 20s black males wearing these types of jeans. You know, I don't even know the name of the brand. I don't really care. But the thing is that can't they not look schlubby? Now, people would say, well, that sounds like you're being racist and blah, blah, blah. No, what it is that if you can't dress properly out in public, just imagine what you were like not in public. And this is a part of the problem about just having a certain civility. We've lost that. And I personally believe a big part of that erosion of civility is because of social media. But don't be surprised when the IQ of Americans go down below 100, you know, and it's at 97. This is the kind of crap that happens.
Here that are completely backwards and don't allow us to help anybody.
It is a fact that some of the violent crime in the New York City transit system is coming at the hands of severely unstable people. Mayor Adams praised the stepped up deployments while admitting that's only part of the answer. The city needs a long-term strategy for its mental health crisis with unstable people.
So that increase in crime that we keep.
Anyone that lives in New York, I'll tell you, at 8 p.m. at Bryant Park, 42nd Street, subway station, at around 8 o'clock, anywhere from like 6 o'clock to around 8:30, you will see this kind of crap all over the place. At the turnstile, before the turnstile, after the turnstile, going down the stairs, and all along the platform. The place is a shithole. And that is a major subway station.
Train doesn't actually exist and is all imaginary. Well, it's finally no longer an imaginary problem because it's way up and everybody knows it. And even though overall crime in the subway is down, the crimes people actually care about, like violent attacks on others or robbery, those are up. And it looks like our leaders can't play the public forever. People are starting to figure this out, and now everybody knows there's a mental health crisis down here, and everybody wants to see action. But sadly, neither the governor or the mayor are going to be able to do a whole lot about this. Mayor Adams has been trying for the last several years to get more authority to take people.
Some of it is a mental health issue, maybe a lot of it. There's a drug abuse issue on top of it. Now, you may want to say that the drug abuse can be wrapped up in mental health. Maybe. All right. That's left for debate. But it's also that lack of civility. Some of these people are literally just, they don't care about life. And that's just the way they're raised. They just don't care. They have zero care. Now, I don't know if that's a mental health issue or it's just the way they were raised.
Off the streets when they're in need of help and when they're a danger to themselves and others, yet he has never been given it. Instead, our city's backed by a legal system that says it's compassionate because it's decriminalized everything, when in reality, there's nothing compassionate about laws that stop someone from getting actual help. If you had a friend or a loved one who was down in the subway and in need of help, you'd come down here and plead with them to leave. You'd drag them out if you had to. Yet New Yorkers are not allowed to do that for each other, even though we spend millions on outreach services that apparently do nothing.
A groundbreaking $650 million investment will include a facility dedicated to stabilizing those with severe mental illness. Part of what promotes psychosis is being on a subway car without any other support. Part of what promotes recovery are other people reorienting you, talking to you, engaging with you.
He is so close to being right. Perhaps he just doesn't want to say it. But the truth is, if people are addicted and they're allowed to remain on the streets indefinitely, they are never going to get the help they need, which could take months or years, but nothing's being done. Well, something is being done. It's just only being done in one particular part of town at a time. It's not being done everywhere at once, which is what we really need.
And this is what happens when you legalize drug abuse. This is right. You pass out needles, you promote it, you open up, these pot stores, and what happens is the society just devolves. Now, people would say, "Oh, people should have their right," and it's all about libertarianism. But there are negative externalities that are hurting society, destroying the civility, making society less productive, hurting one's health. You're telling me that people that are breathing in toxins and breathing in particulates, just because they legalized it, is not going to do pulmonary problems? Yeah, bullshit. It's going to cause COPD, for sure. For sure. But it's legal. That doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean it's healthy. It doesn't mean that it's good for society. But it's legal. That's a big part of the reason why we're having this problem.
The helping hand that is being offered to them. They can go to other subway stations, or they can live in this one, where there apparently aren't any outreach workers. On top of that, our streets are an absolute mess, which means once the weather gets a little bit warmer and people aren't down here in the subway, they may not be exposed to any of the help the city's offering them at all. And that's why the crime problems we've got down here could go on forever.
Take a look at this surveillance video. Police say this man strikes danger with every flame, setting garbage on fire. This is on board a northbound J train in the Woodhaven Boulevard station in Queens last Friday.
So you have someone that's riding the subway, and he's literally lighting trash on fire. Now, don't you remember what happened with that one woman that was burnt alive? Which is horrific. Can you imagine being burnt alive? That's like a terrible death. And you have these crazy people on the subway doing this. But meanwhile, we're supposed to demonize Daniel Penny, trying to save certain passengers from a lunatic. I'll tell you, people need to push back. People need to push back on this, on what's going on in these inner cities.
Another marauding maniac copying a similar crime he and the rest of us all heard about on the news about a month ago. This is terrible, but it's happening again. And apparently this guy committed a whole bunch of crime above ground and then did it again in the subway. He's running all over the place and nobody can stop him. And what's worse is this event took place after the National Guard numbers in the subway were increased and after more police were sent into the subway to try and keep it safe. Things down here are a total mess and it's doomed to remain in its current state as long as we let our streets remain in their current state. And this problem is so much bigger than whoever our governor or our mayor are. We need to start writing actual laws that can actually help people. Think about it. People shouldn't be allowed to use items in public that destroy their lives. That should not be allowed, but it is. And unless that is a crime and people are arrested for it, how are they ever going to get brought into a potential treatment facility? How are they ever going to get a hand that helps them get clean? On top of that, New York needs some sort of stand your ground law which protects the general public in the event they are attacked by some maniac in the absence of law enforcement. Right now, we're dealing with what many call the Daniel Penny effect, where people are terrified of intervening when an unpredictable person enters the equation, which is really bad for a public safety perspective because it just emboldens criminals to have a docile, terrified general public who will allow them to do whatever they want and will put up no resistance if they try to rob or hurt others. What do you think about that? Are New York City's laws putting everyone in danger, and are they handicapping police and mental health outreach workers from actually making a difference in people's lives? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching.
New York's going to hell. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get NAC. NAC is a supplement that I've added to my stack. It boosts up glutathione levels. It helps to detox your liver and your kidney, especially if you take acetaminophen. And NAC also calms your central nervous system. So please go to my store, add that to your stack. Really important to boost up those glutathione levels and soak up those free radicals. NAD Plus is a supplement that I take every day. It boosts up my energy levels. It helps with the mitochondrial health, so I have more ATP. NAD Plus also helps to repair DNA damage. As we get older, we will accumulate more DNA damage. And it gets to a point where it's hard to repair it because there's so much in the queue to repair. So it's important to supplement to try to help repair that. NAD Plus does that for you. In addition, NAD Plus helps to protect your neurons. Very important to start supplementing and protecting your neurons when you're 40 plus years of age. Ubiquinol. This is the most bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. It's very important to take every day. It helps to boost up your energy levels, increase the health of your mitochondria, because if you don't have healthy mitochondria, you are going to age faster, period. Guaranteed, full stop. All right? Ubiquinol help to improve that mitochondrial health, soak up free radicals, which is really important, and it helps to protect your neurons. So taking ubiquinol is extremely important if you're 40 plus years of age, because you don't want gait issues. Have you ever dealt with someone in your family that is showing the signs of Parkinson's disease or Lewy body or some other neurological disease that is tied to geriatric cohorts? Do you really want that? Do you want to try to mitigate that the most that you can? Now, it doesn't mean guaranteed that it's going to be mitigated or that you're going to eliminate it. But many of these things can be mitigated, if not eliminated, by proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, or at least offset it to a later age. Instead of developing the Parkinson's in late 60s, maybe you start developing it in your 90s. Now, do you rather have that? You rather have it in your 90s, or would you rather have it in your 60s if you develop Parkinson's? Protecting your neurons are really important, but not just protecting your neurons through supplementation. You need to protect your neurons by actually moving around, activating those neurons through balancing, through stretching, through resistance training, through moving around, and through training your brain, learn new things. There's a lot of people that once they become an adult and they're busy working and trying to make money, they stop learning. And guess what? When you stop learning, you start atrophying. Your brain starts atrophying, just like a muscle. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the supplements that you need to get healthy. Zeolite. detoxifies your body. It removes heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, including forever chemicals, and you can take this every day. This is how you use it. You take 2 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink filtered water. Do that every day for the rest of your life. Or you can, some people prefer to do a detox once or twice a year. For the ones that want to do that, take 4 or 5 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water. Do that each day until the bottle is done, and do that once or twice a year. But you get better results if you do it every day. In addition, you need to filter your water, and you need to get rid of those processed foods, because a lot of that unfiltered water and a lot of those processed foods have chemicals in it that disrupt your endocrine system, disrupt your immune system, and you're accumulating these toxins. You want to get rid of them. Now, how zeolite works is it binds to the toxin, and after about 6 to 8 hours, you're able to urinate it out. That's why it's so important to take it every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the zeolite, and by the way, use discount 5. Discount 5. All caps, discount number 5, you get $5 off.
And when you can make the connection between a flare going away and us taking that natural gas that would have otherwise been flared to produce gasoline, that gasoline is about 30% less carbon intensive than gasoline that comes from crude oil. So there is a pretty meaningful, environmental win there. But that's the focus is commercial. This is taking zero value natural gas or negative value natural gas and turning it into something that has a lot of value.
You guys are based in Houston?
Yes.
Okay, so the center of this country's energy industry in Houston, what's the feeling there about the transition or the evolution, the transition to greener energy in general? Is the momentum slowing because of who's in the White House? Is there some inevitability that it's just going to go at its own pace?
I kind of think that most of the capacity to make this transition lives within the major E&P companies, major integrated oil companies, already. Yeah. So those are the players that are going to make the largest contribution to an energy transition. And so I think that we're going to see a lot less in the way of mandates and a lot less of regulators picking winners and losers, and it'll be much more market driven, I think, as it should be. But ultimately the people that can contribute most of that are the legacy integrated energy companies.
How did the conversation and development with Diamondback come about?
Well, we were in the process of going public, of listing on NASDAQ, and Diamondback came to us and said, we have been canvassing the market and have really kind of zeroed in on your process as one that could really help us with this natural gas problem that we have in the Permian Basin. And post Diamondback's merger with Endeavor, they went from a large oil company with a gas problem to a very large oil company with an even bigger gas problem. And so now they've got meaningful volumes of natural gas that are not getting the value that it should.
Can I ask one more question? I'm looking at Paul. Okay, if we wind up getting easier permitting though from the Trump administration, and we get the ability to get natural gas out of the Permian in an efficient way to then export it, does that mess up your model?
It really doesn't. There is such an overhang of natural gas, and Texas is already the most friendly environment, in the states for building pipeline capacity. In the last couple of years, there've been at least 2 48-inch, enormous pipelines taking gas out of the basin. The Permian has the benefit of the Gulf Coast and the LNG terminals there in Corpus Christi. So there are places to go with that natural gas, but the volumes are just enormous. And so we are very comfortable that we have a very long runway in the Permian with Diamondback and others, where there's always going to be gas that can't get out of that basin.
Interesting. Fascinating story. Learning a lot here, sitting next to Alex. Ernie Miller, thank you so much for joining us. Ernie Miller is the CEO of Verde Clean Fuels, talking about some more energy stuff. We're going to WTI crude oil. Well, we're off about 50 cents here today, $72.63. Looking at more coming up. Looking at the market here, S&P 500 up 0.6%, 36 points. NASDAQ up 1.2%. This is Bloomberg.
All right. Want to play this is Fox Business about Google.
Daniel Newman with me this morning. China is investigating Google in response to Trump's tariffs. What does this investigation mean for Google? They report after the bell this afternoon, Daniel.
Yeah, good morning, Stuart. Look, we know that there's going to be some back and forth there. There's going to be some microaggression. We've seen it with this AI trade war that's been going on, and it's going to continue here. We know Google services aren't even available in China, so them investigating anti-monopolistic behaviors for Google in China is sort of an interesting inflection, but we know they're having earnings. We know the market is sort of looking for what is China going to do. Well, let's attack America's greatest, most successful, and highest growth companies and see if we can gain some positioning here, because we know U.S. holds a lot of the cards.
It doesn't seem to affect Google or Alphabet, I should say, and they're 1.5% in advance of the numbers. No,
it doesn't have a business impact. It feels to me like they went after Micron, they went after AMD. Those could actually matter, but going after Google seems to me like a pure positioning activity.
Okay, need your position on some of the other movers today. Advanced micro devices, a nice gain, 2.8%.
All about the Instinct business, their GPU business. People want to know, does AMD have a posture to compete with NVIDIA? And of course, with this DeepSeek story that went on last week, is there still all this enthusiasm for GPUs? I think there's a big opportunity for AMD to be the number 2, but there's more and more competition rising, especially out of the cloud providers, Broadcom and Marvell.
So don't do it, don't touch it.
I'm watching.
That's Qualcomm.
I think on the other side of the DeepSeek story, this one actually has a lot of exciting potential. Qualcomm's diversified beyond the handset business, but they want this message to land that AI can be done on devices. Less energy utilization, less reliance on the cloud, less cost. DeepSeek has been put on these devices, and now we're seeing people being able to use these AI, LLM. Other than Apple, Qualcomm is the biggest player in handsets and has made a big run into the PC space over the last year.
You like it?
I do.
Okay. ARM Holdings, ARM Holdings.
ARM is tied to everything right now. They're powering these Grace Blackwell, the biggest NVIDIA systems. They're inside of all of the handsets. They're inside the Apple devices. They're inside the non-Apple devices. Their problem has been pricing power. They need to be able to charge more to drive more revenue and more profitability into the business. They're selling billions of licenses. They had that little loss to Qualcomm in court this last.
All right, so that's that. All right, I want to go to Hannity. He's interviewing Tom Homan.
Those with Robinhood Gold can enjoy a 3% IRA match. Tremendous.
Tears for 500,000 children that were trafficked in the country, separate from families, put in the hands of criminal cartels, and they can't find over 300,000 of them. I guarantee some of these children are sex trafficking and forced labor. Where's your tears for those? Where's your tears for the 250,000 Americans that in fentanyl poisoning because of the open border? Where's your tears for the 600% increase of sex trafficking of women and children? And of course, where's your tears for all the young ladies been raped, murdered, and burned alive? So, it's just pathetic.
Yeah, well, you got some help from President Trump, and for now, he got Canada and Mexico, Colombia, and even Venezuela to accept back these illegal immigrants, and you now have Gitmo as a place to put many of them. How important are those developments to you?
President Trump proves every day he's the greatest president in my lifetime, and I mean that. He's moving at lightning speed. Look what we've done. You're right. Seeing the airplanes that Illegal Aliens landing in Gitmo, a game changer. Seeing the Department of Defense take airplanes south of illegal aliens, first time in my 34 years in this job, a game changer. President Trump's making progress every single day. Our numbers already, remember, Sean, it wasn't too long ago, we were dealing with 10,000, 11,000 illegal entries a day. Yesterday, 524. And not one of them, not a single one was released. They're either returned or detained seeking prosecution. So game changer, greatest president of a lifetime, proves it every day. And look, we got a lot more to do. And I got a great team. We got the greatest president I've ever worked for. You got Secretary Noam. She's already been on the ground with the Border Patrol. She's been on the ground with ICE. She's been on water with the Coast Guard. She's done more enforcement actions in a week than my office has done in 4 years. I got Pete Hegseth, shoulder to shoulder Pete Hegseth, giving us all the DOD access to lock that border down. So, you know, what a great team. You got Steve Miller, the architect, right? He amazes me every day at the White House. We have one hell of a team. We will not fail this president.
Let me read a headline to you. Chicago leaders encourage residents to exercise their rights in resisting Trump's deportation policies. The governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, basically admitted that he knew somebody that didn't have full documentation, that he was hiding over his garage. Then we have Tom Tillis, senator from North Carolina, saying that people should have the right to sue sanctuary cities and states that aid and abet in lawbreaking. Your comment on all of that?
Well, I think the governor's pretty foolish saying what he said, because I got note of it. Won't let it go. We'll look into it. And if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien, that's a violation of Title 8 United States Code 1324. I will seek prosecution, or the secretary will seek prosecution. So maybe he's bluffing. If he's not, we'll deal with that. And as far as suing sanctuary cities, we'll get in line, because the Trump administration is going to do that already. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. One example, right? If the young sanctuary cities in New York City, if they were to give us over the killer of Laken Riley, when he got arrested in New York City for endangering a child, he would have been in jail, and he would have never killed Laken Riley. Sanctuary cities are responsible for deaths of thousands of young children throughout my career, and we're going to sue them. We're going home, and look, we've got to go to the Supreme Court. That's what President Trump wanted to do. He will end sanctuary cities.
You know, there was a 2011 Government Accountability Office study that found 3 million criminal offenses had been committed by illegal immigrants. This is before Harris, Biden, Mayorkas threw the floodgates wide open, 12, 14, 15, who knows. How many, do we have any estimates? We know there's about 350,000 missing children that have been used by illegal immigrants. Do we have any estimates? How many Americans have been victims of violent crime, murdered and raped? Do we have any idea of that number at this point?
You know, there's really no metric on that, because, you know, it's close to 1,000. We have no metric because of one reason. Many sanctuary cities don't even track the nationality. When they book them in jail, they won't ask what country they're from, what their immigration status is, because they don't want ICE to find out. So even though we know sanctuary cities are protecting criminals, we find out about a lot of them. There are a lot we don't find out about, because they simply won't gather the biometrics so we know who they are. But again, I think President Trump, this administration, are going to sue sanctuary cities. We need that information. I'll say it again. Sanctuaries are sanctuaries for criminals, bottom line.
All right, so what will happen? What will ICE do to the politicians, the advocacy groups, the cities and states that have sanctuary status that are aiding and abetting in the law breaking? What will you do to those people that are openly not just opposing, but helping those people that broke the law and didn't respect our borders and sovereignty?
If they openly impede us, that's a violation of federal law. It's a felony. If they knowingly harbor and conceal an alien, that's a felony. We will seek prosecution through the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've got a great U.S. Attorney coming, Pam Bondi. She's all in. So we're going to seek prosecution, Sean. That's what we have to do, because we're releasing public safety threats back in the community. Any sanctuary city, any elected mayor, city councilman, or governor who thinks it's a good idea to release public safety threats back in the community to reoffend, it's just ridiculous. We're going to hold them accountable. The Trump administration will hold them accountable through prosecution.
All right, Tom Holman, great job. Amazing 2 weeks. As you begin your third week, we appreciate your time.
Like I said, 2025 is going to be packed with 10 years of history. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my channel, help support the work that I do by getting the structural nano silver toothpaste and the other great products that I offer. This structural nano silver toothpaste is fluoride free. In addition, it has structural nano silver. It'll help to whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, maintain a good gum line, reduce inflammation, neutralize pathogens, reduce plaque. And by taking this on a regular basis, like every day, and having good oral hygiene, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. Have you ever seen stenosis with calcium deposits or inflammation of valves causing valvular disease, especially in pediatrics, or not pediatrics, in geriatrics, in geriatric patients? That stenosis causes a lot of problems. A lot of problems. You can reduce that stenosis and those valvular diseases by having better oral hygiene. Now, unfortunately, as individuals get older, they can't care for themselves as much. I see this, you know, and unfortunately in the nursing homes, oral hygiene starts to decline, depending on where these geriatric patients are, in a good care facility or a not so good care facility. But the problem is that when people age, even if they're not in a nursing home, their oral hygiene starts to decline rapidly. It is a big problem. A lot of people don't pay attention to these little things. But what happens is that this poor oral hygiene starts to cause additional problems. When you don't have a good gum health and it's inflamed, then bacteria gets into the bloodstream, causing inflammation, causing problems with the valve, causing further plaque buildup. Little plaque that's in tartar that's on the teeth, getting into the bloodstream. And that could cause a little occlusion or cause inflammation in the vascular system and causing further plaque development. You don't want that. So taking things that really improve your oral hygiene is really important. And when you do all these other things that I keep on talking about, neutralize pathogens, soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, boost up energy levels and metabolism, you're going to go into your geriatric years with a lot more vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the toothpaste, the structural nano silver toothpaste, very high quality. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste. This is the best toothpaste you're going to be able to get. All right? Way better than anything that Alex Jones sells. Alex Jones doesn't even know why he's selling what he's selling. Please also go to my store and get the great structural nano silver gel that I have. I have it in a tube form, and I also have it in a dispenser form. They're dual purpose, they're multi-purpose products. You can use it as a skincare, daily skincare. You can use it to help heal a wound, like a cut, an abrasion, a minor burn. And you can also use it to mitigate the cold season, right? You can put it on your hands, it stays active for 5 hours. Way better than Perel. Perel stays active for less than 30 seconds and cracks your skin. Structural nano silver gel heals your skin and stays active for 5.5 hours. You tell me which one's better, all right? And then you can put it around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils and mitigate, and you're creating a barrier and you're weathering the cold season, all right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gels. It's dual purpose. Get some for your work, get some for your household. You're gonna need it. And again, it's dual purpose. works really well topically for skincare. This is a daily skincare routine. Digestive enzyme complex. When you get older, especially when you're 40 plus, you need to reduce the load on your pancreas. Even if you're healthy, your pancreas is not working as well as when you were younger. I don't care how healthy you are. My pancreas is not working as well as when I was in my teens. I guarantee you that that's the same situation for you. Guaranteed. You have to lower the load on your pancreas by taking a supplement that helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Digestive enzyme complex does that. If you're an athlete, either older or younger, to help fuel your body for your workout and do your recovery, taking digestive enzyme complex is important to break up those nutrients, those carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the digestive enzyme complex, reduce the load on your pancreas for ones that are 40 plus and the ones that are athletes. It's really important. But don't take my advice and then maybe in your 50s you start having pancreatic problems. And then you're going to say, oh, he was right. Like always. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. Now, if you've been listening to me throughout this whole broadcast, I've been saying, bring down inflammation and really soak up those free radicals. That will help to supercharge your health, improve your immune system and your tissues, and whatever those tissues are specialized in, that's going to improve. So C60, you can get in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. I take this every day. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. C60 is a 60 carbon molecule that will neutralize free radicals. It's very potent, way more potent than vitamin C, like hundreds of times, if not 1,000 times more potent. Now, C60, you take a teaspoon a day, every day. And what you're going to notice is that the health of your mitochondria is going to improve. You're going to have more ATP, so you're going to have more energy. Your tissues are going to perform better. There's less stress in the cell, less stress in the tissues. So that means your organ systems will perform better. Your glands will perform better. Your endocrine system will perform better. Your immune system will perform better. And you'll slow down the aging process. All right? For the ones that have been watching me for like 5 years, have you noticed I'm not aging? You wonder why? Why don't you follow my protocol? Because it fucking works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, which is what I have in my hand, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. But take a teaspoon a day, take it every day, and that continuousness, you're soaking up those free radicals. It's synergistic with a lot of the other things that I've been bringing up today. And you soak up those free radicals, and you're slowing down the aging process, and you're improving your bodily systems. That means you have more vitality, you'll have more longevity. Again, I have a 4-pillar system. Neutralize pathogens with the max 35s, the max 14s. Bring down free radicals by taking C60. Bring down inflammation by taking turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. And boost up your metabolism and your energy levels by taking Boomer Boost. You do that as a core, you're going to radically improve your health. Now you do all this other stuff like the resveratrol and the omega-3 and the noctokinase and, targeting other systems, then you're reducing cardiovascular disease and you're improving your bone structure. It's a holistic approach that works. All right, I'm going to go to Bloomberg now. They're doing balance of power.
Foods and a pro-American agenda I will vote yes. The medical doctor lines up to support the Trump nominee. Now it looks like, of course, with a Republican-led Senate, that if you get to the floor, things are going to be fine. And we'll assume that RFK Jr. is going to be in that situation. Later today, Tulsi Gabbard teed up in her committee vote here. This is the Intelligence Committee. After Senator Todd Young said he'll support Tulsi Gabbard, looks like the same deal here. Susan Collins also announcing yesterday she'll support Tulsi Gabbard. And so the president gets everybody except Matt Gaetz. And he gets the tariffs against China. Those are in place, by the way. This on-again, off-again thing with Canada and Mexico yesterday, the shortest trade wars in history. Colombia, Mexico, Canada, tariffs never even were implemented. The same cannot be said for China, where we have 10% tariffs that took effect. And if you've been following the bouncing ball here on Bloomberg, China hitting back with reciprocal tariffs. 10% tariff going in our direction, and we have a 15% now on coal, liquefied natural gas, 10% on crude oil, agricultural machinery, large displacement cars, and pickup trucks. So if you're an investor, you're trying to figure out what to do now. What happens if those Mexican and Canadian tariffs end up being put into effect? You call Nathan Dean. That's part of the drill around here, and it's always fascinating to spend time with our friend Nathan, who of course is senior U.S. policy analyst, but has his finger on the pulse at Bloomberg Intelligence about what our clients are asking, what terminal subscribers want to know, what investors are freaked out about. It's good to see you back here. You're not allowed to leave until all this is resolved. Let's just start with what your life has been like. Phone's ringing off the hook. You had 2 webinars this morning. What is everyone asking?
Well, obviously, I think they want to know, first off, the Canadian and Mexican tariff threat. Is it going to be coming back in 30 days? And we have to tell our clients that it most likely will. I mean, this weekend, if you look at President Trump's Truth Social posts, it was all about fentanyl and border security.
Yes.
That's the low-hanging fruit. That's what Ottawa and Mexico City could easily negotiate over and put 10,000 troops on those borders to help address those concerns. But when President Trump talks about economic imbalances, well, that's a little bit harder for things to actually have easy solutions to do. So I need to see continued negotiations between Ottawa, Mexico City, and Washington over the next few weeks, because we may be here in the next 30 days. But next up is obviously President Trump's conversation with President Xi Jinping in China. You know, we have those reciprocal tariffs come back, a little bit more of a muted response than I think China could have put on. But, you know, again, is this a negotiation? And what does President Trump want from China in order to take off this tariff threat? Last thing, we should talk about the European Union, because President Trump said this at Davos, that it's coming. And so if you have investors that are in this U.S.-European Union relationship, you know, yes, we've already dealt with Canada and Mexico. We'll come back 30 days. The European Union tariff threat may be here sooner rather than later.
So the idea of zeroing out, for lack of a better term, our trade relationship with Canada, maybe when it comes to energy, is that something that would make this more long-term, that would give you more confidence in the stability of an agreement?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are more concerned about reciprocal tariffs from Canada on goods that we really need here in the United States. For example, we had one of our questions this morning was, what about home builders? A lot of lumber and timber. What about potash? You know, 90% of our fertilizer industry is coming from potash from Canada.
But when Donald Trump says we have all the trees we need, we don't need their lumber, how do you square those two questions?
Well, it's a short-term versus long-term. Even going back to President Trump in terms of like just wanting to bring manufacturing back from the into the United States. I was talking with a client in Europe. The client said, look, that will take us about 3 to 5 years to buy a plant here. And they're looking at it, but it's just not going to be anytime soon. So if you look at potash in particular, there's going to be, if Canada decides to have a reciprocal tariff on potash, export taxes, all of a sudden you have a lot of Republican farm states now significantly paying higher for the fertilizer industry. And so if we were ever get into this tariff war, and if it actually takes place, for me, I want to see what the responses are from the trade associations, people like the National Association of Manufacturers, the farmers, the ranchers, and so forth, because I want to see the pressure that they put on their Capitol Hill allies to potentially try and convince the White House. But again, this is in 30 days. We still need to focus on China and the EU first.
Well, let's get into China, because this is real for the moment. This isn't going to be the same story as Canada and Mexico. What is it that China could offer that would pull Donald Trump back, or does China not care?
Well, I think it's more so of in terms of like what can China offer?
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I hate saying that on the radio, but
That's a beautiful answer.
But President Trump has often said that he really just doesn't like this trade imbalance, and we're talking about something that's not easily solvable over the next 30 days. We're talking something that probably could take months. And so from China's perspective, I think they put out this muted reaction because of two reasons. One, I think that, China's economy is a little bit more exposed to the United States than the US is exposed to China. I know our great teams over at Bloomberg Economics are putting out some pieces out on this right now. But secondly, it's just more of a geopolitical exercise beyond the economic factor. You're talking about security, national security, Japan, our allies in the region, and so forth like that. So I think this is just I think this conversation with President and President Xi Jinping tomorrow will be one of the first salvos in this negotiation. But I think these tariffs may be around for a little bit longer than some people think.
And while they were at it, starting February 10, Beijing also opening an antitrust probe into Google. They did seem to throw a couple more logs on the fire here. Where is this going in terms of our relationship? This could get a lot uglier with that meeting, or I suppose they could clean things up, but you're suggesting that would be quite a steep hill for
But Google also hasn't been operating in China for several years now. So, it's one of those things where I think that was more of a symbolic measure. But look, China has the ability to put a lot of pain on the United States, if you will. We did a lot of work. Our teams did a lot of work this morning just in terms of semiconductors, Apple, chips, and so forth like that. DeepSeek, this all comes into this narrative here of this US-China relationship. And so, again, I just go back to the idea that, from Canada and Mexico's perspective, there was low-hanging fruit that they could have plucked this weekend. And that was the border, and that was fentanyl, and that was security. But for the United States and China, it's a little bit more complex. And so I'm not sure these tariffs are going to go away anytime soon. This is something that, investors maybe want to stick around with. But instead of a 25% tariff, 10% is a little bit more manageable, and it's not as integral to the American economy as Canada and Mexico is.
Sounds like it's entirely possible that in 30 days we have tariffs against Mexico, Canada, China, maybe even the EU.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've said multiple times that the power of the presidency is more powerful for the president here. There are many ways that he can implement tariffs. By declaring an international economic emergency, he can do this on day one, and all they have to do is walk over to the customs, change the ATS schedule, with a press of a button, and next thing you know, your tariffs are active.
It's a lot different when you're trying to hollow out federal agencies or not spend appropriated monies. A very different story that we're seeing with the Trump administration here domestically. In our remaining moment, do investors care? Are you getting calls about Doge or no?
A little bit, but I think this is more of a Washington structural exercise, not so much a market.
Yeah.
The challenge will be is if they try to gut something like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, there are rules that mortgage lenders are following that they need the CFPB to follow up with, examine them on, or else they're going to be running afoul of regulations and then subsequently could be subject to enforcement risk.
It is a sea of uncertainty, though. It doesn't matter where you look right now. That's the enemy of Wall Street still, isn't it?
Yes.
So that part hasn't changed. Nathan Dean, you don't have to get on the webinar. We bring him to you here on Balance of Power. Thank you so much, as always. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Policy Analyst. He's traveled the world and...
Like I was saying before, that fourth pillar of the health is Boomer Boost. Now, Boomer Boost is a powder. You get a big scooper. You take it once a day. I take it with my lunch. I mix it with my hummus. Now, you can take it in the morning or during lunchtime is probably the best time to take it. And you can lose weight by doing this. You probably would save money because I'm sure your lunch or your breakfast costs more typically than a month's supply of Boomer Boost. But you get 68 nutrients. This helps to improve your cardiovascular health. This helps with your brain. This improves brain health. This improves muscles, strength, and your energy levels. Improves your metabolism. It has a very impressive compound profile. All right. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take a look at the label. But taking this every day, you're going to see huge benefits in terms of your energy levels. You'll also sleep better. You'll be able to digest food better. There's lots of secondary and tertiary effects that I've noticed by taking this. But the thing is that these benefits you start noticing, you start feeling the energy level change after the second day. All right. You feel different. All right. So by taking this every day, you're going to improve your health. Now, you can just take this, right? But if you take it
with that core that I talked about, then you're really supercharging what this does. Okay, and what's that core? The Max 35, the C60, the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the Boomer Boost. That's the core. All right. But some people can't afford the core, or don't want to take the core. That's okay. Taking Boomer Boost, though, does improve your health substantially. And you're building up lots of energy, right? And like I've been saying, energy is a major component to slowing down the aging process. Another big component is soaking up free radicals. So take the Boomer Boost every day, mix it with soft foods, with a smoothie, filtered water. Some people even mix it with milk. Now, you can take separately the barley, either the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley, but it works much better when you take them together. All right. So take the Boomer Boost, and then also take either the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. All right. I'll tell you the differences. It's a protein. It's high density protein. You take a small scoop. You take like a few small scoops of this, like 2, 3, 4 small scoops. Mix it with soft foods or with filtered water or a smoothie or whatever. And if you want to take the Boomer Boost with it, please do. You get more benefit when you do that. Now, the gladiator barley is focused on improving your strength. So if you work out or you want to build muscle and strength, take the gladiator barley. Now you can take it separately, but you'll get more benefit, more gains, more health gains by taking it with the Boomer Boost. You'll also bring down inflammation. You're going to be able to detoxify your body and soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. Or you can take the heirloom barley, which is more focused on detoxification, bringing down the inflammation, and soaking up the free radicals with superoxide dismutase. So you don't get the strength gains as much with the heirloom barley compared to the gladiator barley. If you take this with the Boomer Boost, you'll be able to control your A1C levels, especially you get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of controlling your A1C levels by taking the gladiator barley and the Boomer Boost together. So if you want to control your A1C levels, lose weight, build some muscle, work out, do some cardio, do some resistance, take the gladiator barley every day, take the Boomer Boost every day, you're going to lose weight, you're going to control your A1C levels. Now you add the other stuff that I've been talking about throughout the day, you're going to really supercharge your health. So this is a great way. If you want to lose weight, control your diabetes, if you want to get healthy, you want to gain strength, let's say you're an athlete and you want to get, other strength gains, or you want to fuel your pre or post workout. Taking Boomer Boost and taking gladiator barley will do that. So this is for people that are athletes or ones that are not athletic that want to improve their health. It works for both of you guys. And this is the reason why I keep on saying that if you just pay attention to the way I stack this stuff, many different people types can benefit from this. Male, female, athlete, non-athlete, young, old, all right? But it's the way you stack it. Now, I've built up a box called the Longevity Boost box, where you get the Boomer Boost in your choice of either gladiator barley or heirloom barley. And that Longevity Boost box is at a discount. You can also use discount 5 on top of it to get a further discount. Or you can buy the product separately. That's up to you. But taking them together, you get a lot of benefit. So please take my advice, lose some weight, get healthy, build muscle, follow these stack ideas that I've been telling you throughout the whole broadcast to get healthy. You can mitigate diabetes, heart disease. You can strengthen the health of your neurons. You could slow down the aging process. You can detoxify your body. You can improve your immune system and your endocrine system. It is in your power to do.